We resume the debate on the government plan as amended. Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir.
Before Deputy Gardner speaks, may I request that the Education Minister respond on the point of clarification I raised? I did send him an email with the detailed question.
So I've only just got to open my email.
I'm afraid to say that the time for that has passed because he indicated that he wasn't prepared to respond to your clarification at the end of his speech, but would do so subsequently and privately by email.
So I will do
Understood, sir. Could I seek your... Sorry, was the Minister about to respond, sir?
No, he wasn't, no, because it's too late for that now.
Okay, I think it might be a point of order then, because the answer to the question, if what's in the budget is not factually correct, it could potentially be misleading to the Assembly.
Well, have you spoken yet in this debate?
I have, yes.
You have spoken.
So can I reassure that I can answer the Deputy's email and she can always put it, I'll put it in the public domain, you know. I just want to be absolutely certain it was I'm not trying to hide anything. So I honestly will answer the question in full. But we were just at lunch and time's gone, so there we go.
Perhaps can I suggest that one of the Assistant Ministers answers the question in their speech, because I think it's important the Assembly has the answer before we vote.
Well, if you can email, if you can email a minister, if they're speaking, they could. The minister herself will wind up the debate in due course, and if you wanted to send her an email, she might respond to it. But you wanted the Deputy Rob Ward to give way, and he declined to do so at the end of his speech. So then I'll move on to the next speaker, which is Deputy Gardner. Yes, Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir.
Deputy, you want to make a point?
No, I'm just putting my light on to speak.
Thank you. All right.
This time it's for real.
I'm pleased to hear that.
I hope
Yes.
third time lucky.
Yes, Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. I had really mixed feelings in preparing the speech for the final stage of this budget debate. However, there are things that I must say from a personal point of view as a deputy, as a representative of my constituency in this assembly, and points of view as a president of the Scrutiny Liaison Committee, and I hope I will be within my 15 minutes, but I ask members to bear with me. So personally, in my role as deputy, as I proposed 3 amendments that was successful, I feel I have stood by manifesto commitments and stood by my constituents. We have official recognition, finally, probably first time, and commitment from the government for actual money, not the promise of the money, and I hope money would come, for £500,000 for the duration of this budget on matching basis from the parish to support neighbourhood improvements in areas in St Helier. And I'm grateful for the Minister for Infrastructure to find a solution, even though personally I think the money should come from State of Jersey Development Company. But as long as we have money, we would not complain, and we'll continue to speak about the contribution of the States of Jersey Development Company. The second amendment, the place strategy will be delivered, yes, and funds were found after all, and developers, private enterprise, third sector, and LOs will have clarity on what is expected to create children playing areas. They are needed across the whole island, and it's extremely important. And yesterday, as we heard, a solution was found to provide requested £200,000 for the Cheshire homes, and I think lots of members actually approached me. And I'm very happy with these results. Budget by definition looking forward. But what about here and now? That could be resolved outside of the budget amendments. And actually we've seen the engagement through the debate. I think the Cheshire home that I didn't have chance to have a speech, and I'll do some very, very quick snapshot about Cheshire home because I do think it's important to talk about being a really good example what needs to change during 2025. Cheshire home got in touch and had several meetings with different ministers and officials through 2024. And actually, a month before amendment was launched, it was final email on 11th of October, email to the House Minister saying, please respond, this is urgent, we do need to know how we operate in 2025. And I know that Minister apologized and we all accepted his apologies that he didn't have time to sort it out. Is it good enough? And I have to ask myself, is it just a tip of the iceberg? How the third sector treated by this government? Likely not. I have heard from many other charities that they don't get proper engagement from the government. We all know, and it was quoted from the Jersey Community Foundation report that was research conducted by the PwC, that third sector is essential to the fabric of the island life. This report clearly showed that the third sector brings 230 million to the island life. For example, agriculture, forestry and fishing contributes 39.7. I'm not saying it's important, agriculture, fishery and forestry, but I would suggest that government support for the third sector that bring 230 million into the a contribution to the island life will be treated proportionally, not more, not less, just fair and proportionally. This is not a debate about, there was no debate here. Think about how many hours we have debated agriculture. It was extremely important. I'm not telling that it's not. But how much of time of this debate we did devote for the third sector? Almost none. There was no debate about hardship of the third sector when actually a third of the organizations have fewer than 3 months or worth of financial reserve. Whilst at the same time third sector organizations are currently cross-subsidizing government essential services, services that government needs to deliver, they're covering the shortfalls in our budget. Which means, I'll drop forward. It was very clear, mentioned in the CNG report, that we have lack of clear commissioning framework to address this challenge. Commissioning of the public service, for people maybe who were not aware about this term, I wasn't aware before I became the States member, it's actually to provide resources, finance, facilities, capacity, skills, to make sure that the public services that needs to be delivered will be delivered by the third party. And what is interesting, and what we have, they have charities that run in between different departments, and with each department they have different person in contact. And we actually also understood that each department have different terms and conditions and different payments for the same service. Charities need to do their work, not to run between the government departments. If government will not put it right in 2025, we will likely to see more amendments like mine coming to the budget debate, and I will not excuse myself, oh sorry, why I brought it to the table. Engage with the charities, address their concern, and pay for the services that charities are provided. And it's really important that it will be real engagement and the listening. And I think it was interesting to see how different views view differently. Unfortunately, the Education Minister, Deputy Ward, Rob Ward, is not in the chamber, because from his perspective, he is engaging really well with the private child care providers. We need to remember that private child care providers provide 75% of the child care not to 5. 75%. Now, again, from the submission, and I'm talking about as a president of the scrutiny submission that was submitted to the Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel, it looks completely different. It looks that it is a broken communication, And to be honest, I believe that the Chief Minister and Economic Development Ministers needs to join this engagement, because the childcare, that one of the top common strategic policy priority, which, by the way, I'm really grateful that it was put in the common strategic policy, and I'm really grateful for the Education Minister continue the work was started and it was recognized. I just urge the government again, proper engagement and listening for Jersey Early Years Association and childminders and private care providers. Now, the second concern that you probably heard from all chairs of the scrutiny panels, it's around the numbers and reprioritization. It's really nice headlines. We curb the growth, we reprioritize, we reprofile, and I completely accept each government should have their own priorities. And I'm respecting their own priorities. We all voted, and this is common strategic policy. But common strategic policy is 13 priorities, and the budget is 1.3 billion. Constantly scrutiny on scrutiny level. Myself personally, I asked repeatedly in the Assembly, in the written question, Chief Minister confirming, yes, it will be supplied, not it will not be supplied. How this reprioritization work? What's in and what's out? Now, on Friday, personally, I received an email from the Secretary of the Chief Minister, and I think it was at least an attempt to give something that does exist, because do I understand that it was exist, and I appreciated it, but it was, I received links to the letters. For the 3 ministers, we didn't have the letters, and for all other ministers, we did have the letters. And I'm grateful, at least I received on that page something. I did go through each and every scrutiny submission, and I must congratulate 2 ministers that actually, when I read their submission, I had full clarity what is in, what is out, how it was prioritized, and what's the effect. And these 2 ministers are the Environment Minister, Deputy Steve Luce, and the Infrastructure Minister, Constable Jean. There were a couple of submissions that gonna look better. Actually, the House Minister gave at least some numbers. I have lots of questions around what's behind these numbers, but at least I got numbers. The Home Affairs Minister stated that was no change in priorities, and I accepted it. But at the end of the day, we hear so much time about reprioritization, and if anyone in this assembly knows what is in and what is out, are welcome to have a conversation with me and explain me, because I couldn't. Saying this, I'm pleased that some of the previous government priorities continue to work, and Deputy Ward definitely mentioned also the school meals, and I'm happy. The only minor comment for the Treasury Minister, the Treasury Minister presenting the budget said this new funding, it's not new funding. I just remind all members that 1.6 million was voted last December, and this is why Deputy Ward was able to deliver school meals to all schools by this Christmas. And I'm really grateful for Deputy Ward, because I think it was lots of work to deliver it, but it was all put in place in advance, and it's good that it's happening, and I'm happy for the people of, for the children. The matter of truth, also the budget hasn't been reduced. It has grown by 3%. And one of the things, it's about the numbers presentations. There are some confusion where 10 million support business was coming from, and not immediately it was clear. And during the corporate services public hearing, the Treasury officials admit that it was an error, and it has been rectified. So we did agree that 10 million it actually grows. And as Deputy Ward mentioned just yesterday, Controller and Auditor General report has been published and found that COVID business support that was administered by Jersey businesses was overclaimed, an overclaimed of 12.6 million. Now we also don't have data how 6.7 million was distributed this year for agricultural grants. So we don't have actually good history of distributing these grants, and 5 million still not be recovered. And I have huge questions mark how our 10 million will be allocated, and we will need to look into this. I'm looking at the time. Cabinet Office. completely right. As the chair of the scrutiny, corporate scrutiny panel said, the Cabinet Office budget has been reduced. But if you start to look into the numbers, what is Cabinet Office? And you bring together Cabinet Office, technology and digital services, people services, and also not including communication department that actually still continue, it's gone into the department. So all these three together, it's 80 million. When the budget for the Cabinet Office at previous 2024 was 77 million. So again, to be fair, we can see, I need to acknowledge the reduction of the cost of these three areas over the next 4 years, and I hope we will see the reduction without the outcomes to the public. And here coming to other part, it's common strategic policy well accepted. One of the amendments that I put forward, it was enable design homes for aging population, and it also was addressing demographic provision. It might be there in the budget, it might be somewhere hidden under, but when we ask what is for pensioners, the Chief Minister during his public hearing, we found a way to retrofit it, but I don't think there is much for the elderly in this budget, unless it was, again, hidden somewhere. But it needs to be very clear and transparently be presented. And this is the problem all along with this budget. As the scrutiny, we found really, really challenging to understand the numbers that will match. Especially, we have huge growth in health, but we've been told, don't worry, we'll produce you the plan. We're asking how 1.1 million for the lifelong learning will be spent. During the public hearing said, don't worry, the program is under development. We ask, where is the prioritization list for IT programs, which was promised to PC some time ago, and we've been told, don't worry, we will do it. When you will do it? So as a president of the Scrutiny Liaison Committee, I would like to say thank you for all members of the scrutiny and officers supported the scrutiny through this budget. It was a difficult program, and input is really received and not always accepted, and Jersey needs much more than ever scrutiny working in 2025 to deliver for the public of Jersey.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. So any budget is a huge, I realise this is a bit of a graveyard slot. There's only 4 ministers in the chamber. I shall crack on anyway. Any budget is a huge beast, and it is difficult to work out at the end of a long week exactly where we've arrived. I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. And 6, thank you. He's just in time to hear me say something nice about his party. Any budget is a huge beast, and it is difficult to work out where we got to. Let's say, first of all, who are the winners? Well, I'd say Reform Jersey are winners. They have a clear plan, get a focused programme of delivery of some key manifestos commitments through, and then campaign on the basis of the next election of look what we can achieve with 3 ministers, think what you could do if we put us in charge. Whether you look on that with excitement or terror will be emotions equally shared within the Council of Ministers. Deputy Tom Binet is a big winner. Bailed out on health spending every time he asks and given carte blanche to pursue the hospital project without political restraint. And I'll return to that. Deputy Farnham is a winner. He has shepherded a budget through this assembly with great success. We do spend our time talking about the bits with which we disagree. That's the nature of a debate, focused on amendments. But there is a huge amount on which we do actually agree. The budget gets on with lots of things that need progress. Progress on the living wage is great. Continuing the work of the last government in raising tax allowances and uprating benefits is very welcome. The closer matching of the capital programme to the available capacity in government and in construction is sensible in principle, although many doubts have been expressed around the actual decisions made. It is right that we should be looking to curb the growth in government and in public spending. In many ways, it's a necessary exercise, but there should be an intelligent examination of what government's done, and that's not what I think we've had. So the frustration I have is in the execution. It has been done blind, without much thought and planning and vision, which is what has led to a string of amendments that in many ways tried to gain greater alignment between supposed government objectives and their actual actions. We've had rather a sad litany from this government during the debate on many of these amendments, which were kind of a basically computer says no. Even when there was an obvious contradiction between government cuts and their supposed ambitions, they pushed back. The Chief Minister said when he took on the job that he would engage more with backbenchers. This was a new type of government that wanted to work with the Assembly. I don't think we've noticed that. There was an engagement with amendments when the government feared losing, I think, but that's not exactly a new beginning. Having seen this thing from both sides, I can say that the budget process does mitigate against engagement with backbenchers. Ministers spend months trying to wrangle a budget. They arrive at carefully balanced compromise, and then annoying backbenchers start destabilising the carefully constructed edifice. But that's the system we have, and I think that the way it's gone through has actually been very similar to every other year. So this is a government that has made a fetish out of doing less. There's a saying from a book I read when I was a kid that stayed with me all my life, which is, argue for your limitations, and sure enough, they're yours. That is this government's big idea. It has not just been making savings, it has been deliberately cutting its own capacity to do things. Cutting consultants. A great slogan, but what an own goal in execution. It has led to delays in developing the wind farm, in doing work on gas security and numerous other things behind the scenes. And then you know what? It all gets quietly put back in. But after 6 months, where the process has been gone through and a bit of bureaucracy has been gone through and everybody's applied for the job again and all the rest of it. That's what happens when you have government by populist slogan. This is a budget where the ability to get things done was sacrificed for a cheap headline. Cut bureaucracy, cut red tape, arguments that were shredded by Deputy Jeune and Deputy Miles in the debate on outcome-based accounting yesterday. It plays well with a JEP editorial, but it doesn't help government deliver. What was needed was a clear analysis of where consultants were being used inappropriately, and then to set the use of consultants against political realities, political goals. That didn't happen. There's been a complete lack of clarity with the cuts. That's cuts in the comms department. Or were they? Or were they simply redeployed? It's been impossible to track. Similarly, the freeze on senior appointments. A chief officer resigns and the government trumpets that it's making savings. But will it? When the question is asked, will you replace the chief officer, as we did with the renamed CLS, we were told, yes, of course. So where's the saving? Is this a redundancy programme? In which case you should be closing posts. You make a post redundant, not a person. If it isn't, on what basis are you letting people go? The government's programme is, as we know, deliberately unambitious because there is so little on which all ministers agree. The budget represents a postponement of the deep reckoning which this island needs to face over issues like productivity and ageing population, health spending that's spiralling out of control, climate change, over a vision, in fact, for where this island is going. The reason is, of course, it simply isn't possible to produce a long-term vision that puts Reform Jersey's manifesto alongside Deputy Tom Binney's vision for the island. It's a marriage of convenience, but sometimes, as sometimes happens with arranged marriages, they can work, at least for a while. I don't want to be too harsh. People might think I've got a downer on this government. The Chief Minister has played the hand he has been dealt with considerable political skill. He had to make a government that bound together all those members whose main point in common was they voted for the vote of no confidence. And doing that was an achievement. Holding it together is also an achievement. But the price has been to put tackling most of the island's long-term issues on hold. It will be the next election that will be the battleground for that. And it's worth mentioning in that context the great big hole in the budget discussion, which is Pillar 2. Still hiding in the shadows, but I think destined to play a very big role in political discussion going forward. The problem with such a limited ambition and vision is it finds expression in the chaotic and contradictory cuts the government has made, which amendments tried unsuccessfully to reverse. Numerous amendments showed up the contradiction between what government said its goals were and what it says and what it was doing in the budget. Stats Jersey, Digital Jersey, Jersey Business. The government won those votes, and indeed my abiding memory of this debate, I think, will be seeing the reform ministers all racing into the chamber when a vote is called, perhaps taking time off from their social media feeds, to cast votes against a succession of amendments which everyone in the Assembly knows, had they not been in government, they would have been supporting. I think it was a bit of a Pyrrhic victory in that it exposed the lack of strategic thinking and vision at the heart of the government. I want to say a few words about the purchase of the Social Security purchase of the Social Security building with the Social Security funds. I welcome the Minister's commitment to work with the panel, with the Social Security panel, and that will certainly be an issue that we will be talking about. I think the fundamental point that Social Security funds should not be deployed in pursuit of wider goals because money is tight elsewhere is one that is now going to become a battleground. As the debate on the living wage support scheme went on, my alarm rose in that we went from reluctant taking of money to some speeches apparently being quite proud of taking the money because it would deliver on wider social goals. And that is, of course, exactly the slippery slope that was feared. I wonder when Project Breakwater comes along, whether or not a Social Security fund might again be in the firing line for some creative investments. It makes me think actually of what's happened in the UK, where when money is tight, local councils invested in various schemes with public money that were considered to be surefire investments, property investments and so on, that have ended up bankrupting a string of councils. And I think we're nowhere near that place at the moment, but that's the potential danger. But my main point about this is why I cannot support this budget is this. I'm sure it will count for very little from this government's point of view, but I would have been prepared to support the budget and swallow my disagreement with a number of items on it, but I cannot do that because of the health budget, and in particular because of the attitude to the new health facilities. I want to say, by the way, that despite what some people say, this is not personal. I have no personal animosity to the health minister, and I'm not bitter. Not with him, the chief minister, or any other minister. I simply have a fundamental political difference about the way the health minister is approaching his portfolio. That is why I have to say it is frankly a disgrace that this government has essentially said to the health minister, you go ahead and spend the money however you want without political check. And I say that because I repeat what the Treasury Minister said when we had her in for a scrutiny hearing about the new hospital facilities, and I'm afraid she did not know very much about the non-Overdale parts at all. I think it's a grave abdication of responsibility. I don't want to criticise the Treasury Minister too much. I think she's an excellent minister. I think the problem is a political one. The Health Minister, it seems, cannot be challenged. It is not enough to say that because we need to get spades in the ground at Overdale, we will give the Health Minister free rein. Let me spell out the budgetary implications of that health facilities budget. We are committing tens of millions of pounds, although the Minister won't say exactly how much, to facilities with no business case, no clear rationale, no idea of what the money will deliver, or what else will be required to finish the job. We will potentially end up with 4 hospital sites, where in the UK and pretty wherever else in the world, one hospital would serve a population of several million people. Who wouldn't want lots of hospitals? Love it. But they have to be paid for. And I agree with the Constable of St Clement, we may well end up on the hook for over £1 billion to be spent on healthcare facilities, and we'll sleepwalking into that. On top of that, we have a budget overspend in health that went up from 18 million in April, 20 million in May, 28 million by October, and now I think we've confirmed another 3 million on top, all within the space of 9 months. You might think that it was time to question a few of the supposed fundamental assumptions around spending on health, but we're not. I cannot give a vote for a budget that gives the health minister free rein to spend on health facilities in secret. where his idea of scrutiny is that he tells a scrutiny panel in private what he's up to, but there's no assembly or public comment possible. It is scandalous. It may be politically necessary for peace in the Council of Ministers to not challenge the Health Minister, but I say to ministers that in this regard, you are weak and you are complicit. The Assembly may endorse the government's approach, but I am not prepared to put my name to it. I will not be told in a few months' time, oh, you voted for this, as people have said in terms of this common strategic policy here. I will not endorse that approach. I will not have it in my name. I'm afraid I will be voting against.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Ferry.
Thank you, sir. And I rise simply to provide some clarity on something that Deputy Reniff just mentioned in his speech in relation to payroll savings, particularly from CLS. So the payroll savings that have been made at CLS from the departure of the Chief Executive will be taken from that department's budget, sir. And if one of the group directors is appointed substantively to their post, then that post within that department will not be further replaced. And if a chief officer is appointed from outside, then posts will still need to be lost within that department so that those savings are maintained. So there are real-term savings going forward, sir. And this will be the case for wherever posts are removed. So there is always a mechanism to make sure that those savings are made today and they are maintained into the future. I just thought it was important that I provided some clarity around that point, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Does any other member speak on the proposition as amended? Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, before this debate closes and the Treasury Minister sums up, I'd like to thank members for their contributions over the past 4 days. We have had some robust debates on the amendments presented this week, as well as on the substance of the budget. I believe we as ministers have clearly articulated the rationale for each position we have taken to deliver a fair, funded and balanced budget. Where it has been possible for us to agree or work with amendments, we have done so. That is the approach I will always take, sir. That is the approach Council of Ministers will always take. The focus of the Council of Ministers in bringing this budget is to ensure that we maintain the quality and level of public services that all islanders expect, while at the same time stemming unsustainable growth in the public sector. This budget, sir, as amended, will deliver clear, affordable and sustainable plans for the remainder of our time in office, sir, and beyond. It provides the funding needed to deliver our 13 CSP commitments, sir, as agreed and approved by this Assembly. It invests in our frontline services and our staff. It right-sizes the public sector, sir. It right-sizes our capital programme to an achievable level, sir, whilst also reducing consultancy spending. Now, we all know that as an island nation, a government of our size, we cannot have a huge public sector in the context of bigger towns and cities and countries. So it will always be necessary to utilise consultancy and expertise where possible. But we have got a little out of hand on that, and we are pulling it back in line. This budget, sir, delivers the savings necessary to replenish our financial reserves, and it minimises government fees and charges, in essence, sir, keeping more money in islanders' pockets. When this Council of Ministers brought our CSP proposal to the States Assembly for debate in June of this year, we were clear that our objectives for the next 2 years should be focused on delivering the very best outcomes for islanders in the short, medium and long term. Ministers and their chief officers have had to make difficult decisions in the preparation of this budget about the services and programmes they wish to prioritise and, where appropriate, where the savings could be made. And this budget so invests in public assets, new healthcare facilities, technology and the public realm. It takes steps to safeguard and grow our island's financial reserves, which is essential, sir, to our long-term financial security. Members will know, they will remember that the Fiscal Policy Panel were crystal clear. They were crystal clear in their advice, published earlier this year, about the economic challenges Jersey faces and the steps we should take as a responsible government, sir, and as a responsible assembly. We must focus on improving productivity across all sectors. We must replenish our reserves, and we must reduce unnecessary spending, sir. And it is that advice that has been critical in shaping the budget we have before us today. While we have seen a positive downward movement in terms of inflationary pressures, sir, and the reduction in the RPI, and many islanders are still struggling to meet their day-to-day costs. The provisions we vote on today will provide the funding essential to support our local employers as we transition to a higher wage economy. And in supporting a business and supporting islanders with their day-to-day costs, sir, I'm also pleased that the Treasury Minister has identified and applied freezes on duties on alcohol and fuel for 2025, sir, as well as increasing income tax thresholds and allowances. But this budget delivers more than short-term cost of living support. After years of debate, we can finally begin construction of the new hospital at Overdale in spring 2025. This, I hope, sir, being an optimist, will end the uncertainty that has impacted patients and staff and clinicians for far too long. Coupled with the additional investment in healthcare contained within this budget, we are making a concerted commitment to improve how we deliver care in Jersey. And this is not siloed thinking, sir. This is an holistic approach to ensure, in a short time frame, that we, that we have the staff, we have the skills, and we have the facilities to deliver the quality of healthcare that islanders expect. And it is matched there by the commitment of the Health Minister, the Assistant Health Ministers, the Council of Ministers, and within the department, sir, to bring the department long-term funding and costs in order. Nobody has a blank cheque. No minister has a blank cheque. And this Council of Ministers is working in a consensual way, sir, in a collective way, to ensure that we bring the health costs back under control. And that will be helped considerably by the arrival of new healthcare facilities, not least the hospital and the associated facilities that will follow. In line with FPP guidance, I know we need to think more critically about our plans for long-term infrastructure investment. And work is ongoing to develop a long-term plan to address these issues, which we will bring to this Assembly. And this budget provides the foundation for that work, where islanders will see notable improvements in the coming 2 years. So, as all members will know, we cannot live outside our means, and yet over the last 5 years, government departmental expenditure has grown exponentially from 780 million in 2019 to an estimated 1.3 billion in 2025. 2025 according to this budget. In all good conscience, we cannot continue the trend of increasing government spending at the rate we have seen in recent years. And this budget, sir, begins to address that, sir. It begins to address that by curbing growth, by putting our finances on a solid footing and focusing on replenishing our strategic funds. This budget, so in short, sets strong foundations for our medium and long-term economic planning and a clear pathway to improved finances for the longer term. Turning to scrutiny, sir. I thank scrutiny for their efforts. But this Council of Ministers strongly refute the claims in relation to lack of detail. The budget presented in the same format, probably slightly a thicker budget book than recently, together with the budget annex, has been presented in the same format that it has done for many years, sir. We have worked with and provided comprehensive and detailed responses, sir, probably amounting to many hundreds of pages of additional detail in requests to very many very good questions from scrutiny. I make no criticism of scrutiny for really drilling down into the budget, sir. And of course, we will continue to work closely with scrutiny in the year ahead. Departmental plans will be produced reflecting the results of the budget, and any amendments, sir, the business plans have to be amended to reflect that and published in January along with the ministerial priorities. Some members have talked about maybe, I'm not sure if they were looking to find a division in the Council of Ministers. But for the first time, I think for a long time, certainly in my time in the States Assembly, I believe we have a Council of Ministers that is truly reflective of the makeup of this Assembly. I would describe it, sir, as I would describe the budget, as socially responsible and economically conservative. And I think that is Deputy Sutton has the same expression on his face as I did when he said it was a socialist budget. But it's a balanced budget that represents society and does not shy away from helping those in our society, in our community that need help the most, especially at these difficult times. I know it's not popular for many that we are moving to a higher wage economy, sir, but it is necessary. This government believes it is necessary and will ultimately benefit islanders, sir. I think it will benefit the economy. It will take some time to settle in, and that's why it's important we have the mechanisms in place to ensure a smoother transition as possible, sir. In closing, may I just provide some thanks. I would like to thank very many who have played a part in creating, debating and delivering this budget, sir, to the Treasury Minister, the Treasurer and the Treasury team for their unstinting work and commitment, to the scrutiny members, their staff, especially their staff and officials who, judging by the amount of correspondence we have received, have been extremely busy. I'd like to make sure they get properly recognised. To the Ministerial Support Unit, and for all the private secretaries and the officials who have helped us put the budget together and deal with the scrutiny. To all of the staff across the public sector who have rallied behind the new government, notwithstanding the uncertainty that in the senior management levels has been created by our drive to right-size, to resize, to reorganise. And I want to thank them and respect them, sir, because they have remained unfazed, and their attention and dedication to duty is unquestionable. And last but not least, to the AGREF staff, sir, for all of the work they have done. An exceptionally brave move to put the new website live a week before the budget, and it seems to have worked reasonably well thus far. So, in finishing, sir, I just wanted to restate that delivering a budget is never an easy task, where funding for essential services must be carefully balanced against the need to protect the island's long-term financial interests and the very legitimate challenges by states members, who all have their own priorities. We're all working for our island, we're all working for our constituencies. It's absolutely right, we challenge in this assembly on their behalf, sir. I believe this budget manages to successfully achieve the balance, sir. It's a budget that reprioritises growth, seeks to curb expenditure, sir, and provide investment in our reserves for the future, sir, and I hope members will join me in supporting this proposition. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Deputy Ayer.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we are now being asked whether we should support this government plan for 2025, or whether we are of the opinion that it does not meet the needs and requirements of the people of Jersey. This is the first budget being proposed by the Reform Jersey coalition government, and I am sure that many people will be hoping that it is the last. Although we may have to endure a further iteration next year prior to the election in 2026. This is not something which many of us will look forward to, as it seems clear to me that the Council of Ministers is treading water, trying to muddle through to what will be a very eventful general election. What does this proposition bring to the people of Jersey? What hope is there for the future? Where is the forward planning? Where is the vision? It seems that all thought of long-term planning has been sidelined to try to appeal to the already disgruntled electorate. I believe that they deserve better. I have many concerns about this budget, including around the vehicle testing centre, which has been dropped yet again. This is one of many projects that will not be progressed, as well as a replacement abattoir and the vital requirement of building our sea defences at Havre des Pas and at other vulnerable sites around the island. Statistics Jersey are having their budget cut, and therefore we will see the business tendency survey discontinued, and the opinions and lifestyle survey may also be suspended. What sort of message are we sending to our local business community if we cannot even afford to find out what our local businesses actually think of the economy? We should be building our relationships with the business community. We also see the reduction of the grant to Jersey Finance and the budget cuts to Digital Jersey and Jersey Business. This collectively sends the wrong message to our budding entrepreneurs and will not encourage others to come to Jersey to set up their businesses. There is, of course, the £20 million to subsidise the rise in the minimum wage, but it is difficult to tell who exactly will benefit from this subsidy, and even then, what happens after 2 years when the entire cost will fall onto all business owners, large and small. This will lead to inflationary pressure, as stated by the government's own chief economist. Meanwhile, we see the annual increase in public sector jobs up 440 to June this year, and over the last 5 years it has risen by 1,890, which is a huge increase of 24.2%, which requires massive financing. And all this on the back of an 8% increase
across the board for all civil servants, which a Treasury Minister described only on Wednesday as being slightly higher, with the prospect of above-inflation rises for the next 2 years. We can expect to see more of the same if there is another reformed Jersey government in 2026. Within this budget, there seems to be little hope for the construction industry, which has seen a decrease of 160 jobs in the last year alone. And also, no encouragement has been given to hotels and restaurants who have seen a decline of 100 jobs in the last year. Why do we continually try to destroy all of our local industries rather than encourage them? And all of these shortcomings come at a time of the failed tendering process for the ferries. How can such a monumental failure have occurred when there was so much available information about those who were offering to run the service? Our Council of Ministers, like the wreck of the Medusa, has been cast adrift on a raft of indecision, floating aimlessly on a sea of ineptitude. Sir, we need to build our relationship with the business sector. We need to build our relationship with the hospitality sector. We need to build our tourism industry. We need to build our fintech industry. But above all, we need to build. I can see no hope for the construction industry within this budget. And without the prospect of an island plan within the next 2 to 3 years, I expect to see further decline and more empty building sites around the island. What message does this send to young Jersey families desperate to get onto the housing ladder to enable them to raise the next generation of islanders? These are only some of the shortcomings of this government plan, but I'm sure that others will highlight the many concerns. Because of these concerns, I am unable to support this proposition today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Is there any other motion to speak on the proposition as amended? Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. I'll be brief. It's been a long week for everyone, and firstly, I too would also like to...
Something making a noise in your area again. You know what it is.
I've got nothing.
It'll distract you
Yeah.
and others, I think. It's always in that zone of the chamber. Not quite sure what it is. Not saying it's you, Deputy Wilson, but it
It might be me, my such electric personality, sir. I don't know, but
may be there.
So it may be an air tag, something that identifies...
Do you want to stand up when you're...
Sorry, sir. It may be an air tag. That sounds like the signal of an air tag, which identifies things that you may or may not lose.
Right.
if I turn my microphone off...
There's no air tags around here.
No.
Want to try from
It may
there?
well be me. Shall I talk through Deputy Andrews' microphone?
See if this works better.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah, Sarah, I'd just like to say thank you to members who have contributed to the debate, and particularly to the debate on the SCAE. There are things in the budget that promise a lot and will no doubt be a priority for all of us to track that delivery. I want to ask the Chief Minister to deliver on the intentions and to move ahead with the plans that we want to develop for the SCAE. Being accountable for me is about giving a satisfactory reason for what you're doing. And this budget may be well-intentioned, but the reasons given for some of the decisions we've accepted this week have been a bit more than opaque. So I'm really disappointed that we haven't had any real plan to address the economic realities of what we face, particularly when it comes to frailty. Particularly when it comes to providing opportunity for young people, and particularly taking into account that if we're not careful, we're going to be really behind the curve when it comes to innovation and technology and development. And personally, I think had there been more engagement with members, we might have been able to add some value to some of the propositions that were coming forward, and maybe just add a little bit more of a dimension to that. For me, there have been too many backroom deals done at the last minute. It's been difficult keeping track of government's intentions. And I hope that as a result of some of the comments that have been received from members, the ministerial team and government will actually take that back and do something about that to actually give some more confidence to the fact that we all have a voice, we all have something to say, we all want to contribute. I think when the Chief Minister took up his tenure, he said that he wanted to see a more collaborative and more inclusive Assembly. Sadly, I don't feel that that has been the case. I just want to address Deputy Ward's comments about the SCAE and the removal of the reference to St Helier. And I do that because I think it's important to constituents in both communities to know what options were open. Deputy Ward could have actually come and made another amendment to my amendment, but he didn't. And my question to him is, why didn't he? Because I think we might have been able to find a solution. And I think what has been helpful is in expressing those frustrations and those concerns about young people in the SCAE. The Chief Minister has listened to that and pleased that he has agreed to meet with myself and the Conatab in January to take forward some of the things that we want. As a member of a scrutiny panel, three actually, we've been really working hard to develop our role as critical friend. But in doing so, we actually need to have openness, transparency, and a really helpful exchange between ministers and scrutineers to be able to really account to the public. Again, I would ask the Chief Minister if, in terms of accounting for the plan, accounting for the delivery, that this is a discussion with ministers about how and in what way scrutiny can be supported in its process, just as much as we are trying to support ministers deliver on their objectives through that critical friend role. Finally, I just want to come to the health service. Over the last 9-10 months, I've chosen not to make any real comments as previous health minister because I wanted to see the new health minister succeed or at least move forward with some of its ambitions. It's sad to say that we've never had an exchange on this, and I would have liked an opportunity to be able, with both him and his ministerial team, to see if there was anything I could have offered to them, but sadly that engagement hasn't been there. I don't want to stay silent on it anymore because what we have seen over the last couple of months is a financial recovery programme that is now out of control. Health spending is out of control, not only on a revenue basis, but also on a capital basis. And I agree with my fellow panel chair, Deputy Renouf, that trying to get into the detail of how much money is allocated to each element of the scheme is really, really difficult. Building a new hospital is not going to solve the healthcare crisis. The financing of whatever comes next, I would urge members to be really on top of, because you need to know that when you're recreating, transforming services, it costs even more money. So I would hope at some point in the year we may see more detail around the hospital spending that ministers can feel they can share or they must share, and that members will feel more confident about the quality and the detail of the information that's coming forward. We're spending nearly £710 million. We had a short debate on that yesterday. It took us 2.5 hours to talk about £2.5 million for a youth club. The proportions and the priorities around that completely misguided. So, sir, For me, the issues around the island facing the biggest economic challenge, particularly around frailty, particularly around young people, and the opportunities that digital could have given. I don't really see or get a feel for this in this plan. I would have liked to have seen that. And it's on that basis that I think it lacks a bit of vision. It's very transactional, and therefore I cannot support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Andrews. Oh, do you want to speak?
Sorry, sir, it's just because
Of course, that's right. Yes, I now realise that. Is there any other member to speak on the... Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. I rise with some sense of concern and disappointment about the fact that we are being asked to pass a budget, the most important decision of any parliamentary calendar. There are confidence motions and there are supply motions, and this is a bill of supply. And when a government doesn't get its bill of supply through, it fails. I know the government will succeed because they've succeeded in every amendment that they wish to have. And it's almost, I hope government members will understand, I've been on the other side. I don't think I've ever been leading a budget where a budget that I have proposed has not meant that amendments have had to be made to the finance law because members have had the right and won the arguments. It seems that we have, if I may say, raised some valid points, and I wish that there would have been some opportunity to find solutions, but those have not been given to us. I have never found it so difficult, sir, to advance budget amendments, and I'm hugely grateful for the GREF staff. But it was a feeling as though I am being spiked at every turn. I don't mean that in a derogatory way. It's just there's barriers that have just been lifted. I'm sorry that I didn't get my amendments through. I accept the will of the Assembly, but it took me so long to make sure that it could be translated into law. And then I was faced with the situation where the government had accepted halfway house on 2 of my amendments, but I've lost everything. And I just don't understand how that has happened. I have never been a member of this Assembly and seen a budget that has been, which the government has got its way. And I just think that's a really odd and uncomfortable situation. This budget has been hailed by some as progressive, the first socialist budget. But let's call it what it is. It's at best a consensus patchwork, and an inexplicable one at that. It concerns me that members also of Reform think that they are the only members that care about low pay. They're not. I care about low pay. My approach may be somewhat different. I believe that the cake needs to be grown. I believe that everybody will benefit, and we can have discussions, respectful discussions about tax. But everything I hear about the Reform future is about taxing more wealthy people and redistributing it. And I can see the chairman of Reform, and that horrifies me. I'm not sure that that's what the electorate that I serve in St Saviour want. I'm not sure that they want that. I think they want economic growth as well. And they want fairness in terms of the way their social services are delivered. I am uncomfortable, sir, about the 20 million fund that was, and I've been no criticism to the Sustainable Economic Development Minister. I know he's been under enormous pressure, but I have to say to members, I asked them whether they think that the package of measures that we've approved from the Social Security Fund, which I accept is coming from it, has actually been scrutinised. It was actually lodged on the Friday before the deadline of amendments. I don't think there has been any scrutiny about that money whatsoever. And I'm very, very concerned about that. I'm supportive of the move to the living wage, but I want it done properly, I want it done openly, and I want it done with scrutiny. And I don't believe there has been, and I'm looking to the relevant scrutiny panel chairs, I don't believe that they've actually been briefed and considered those package of measures, and it's a very, very large amount of money. And I think I'm just looking to the relevant scrutiny chairs. I don't think they've scrutinised it, and that worries me. 20 million. unscrutinised. The FPP have, I'm pleased that the chair of the Economic Affairs Scrutiny Panel raised the issue of inflation. I am very, very concerned, have been from the start, about the rising level of domestic inflation, that's self-inflicted inflation. I'm very, very concerned about the issues of competition in Jersey. I'm very concerned about the rising cost of living. There's something wrong when I hear so many people talking about the cost of living and then thinking the RPI and being told that the RPI is coming down when it isn't. And I repeat again, and I say to the Assistant Economic Development Minister about statistics, it's not good enough to say that a statistic is better. A statistic must be comparable, and it's not comparable. We don't have an RPI figure or a inflation figure that's in line with international standards. And it is shocking, I say shocking, sir, that we've got statistics that we as Deputy Gorst has done the job and Deputy Balash is not here today, I've done the job as External Relations Minister, and I know how important statistics are, credible statistics are, in getting the message across. And I've heard nothing about the importance of international standards on statistics, and we've denuded the statistics jersey as a result. I think it's better than it was, but it's nowhere good enough. There are issues affecting every household, yet they are barely acknowledged in the budget. The Fiscal Policy Panel has been clear. Inflation is one of our biggest threats to the economy. I think they say that in words, and that affects the livelihood. It is the killer. It is the silent killer of every pound in every wage packet or every income that a retired person gets, and it is rising. It is incomparable, and we all know it. We all know it. It's rising, and this budget, I don't think, does anything to address. It's not just good enough to say we're going to give people greater tax allowances. I've been part of that. That's what you do in the urgency phase, but then you get to the actual issue of the cost of living. And what is this budget doing to do anything about it? Well, I don't think there's a single measure about cost of living, not one. If I'm wrong, the Treasury Minister can tell me, but I don't think there's one meaningful measure, and it's been very difficult. I've asked the Treasury Minister with greatest respect. I've done lots of budgets. The opacity of the budget and scrutiny panels, the Chief Minister loves the fact, he says, that he's had so many interactions, but the interactions have been trying to find the numbers. The numbers are not there. They're buckets of money. They're just buckets of money that I would not have ever been allowed as the Treasury Minister to bring forward. There has to be absolute transparency and accountability in terms of where money is. And scrutiny panels, I think, of which I'm not a member of any, have struggled to find out what it is. And I have to say, in terms of savings, having been beaten up and told that there is an austerity budget, I respectfully say to the chair, to the leader of Reform, the budget measures that were made, I didn't make the one that he's talking about, but I made £50 million of efficiency savings twice, maintained public services. I don't think I cut benefits for the two that I did. Maybe if it's a successor, but we made the public service more efficient. And frankly, the savings targets that are being put that are unknown in terms of their delivery are but a drop in the ocean compared to what I was asked to do and my colleagues on the Finance and Economics Committee and subsequent Treasury. They're a drop in the ocean and they're not actually even thing. I was given a hard time in budgets, rightly so, that I didn't explain where the savings were coming from. And I will reiterate another refrain, sir, that the abolition of the 3-year approach, Deputy Taddeo, I was pleased to support him in his relation to the arts funding because that gave certainty. I was absolutely horrified to hear that even in November, the ALOs didn't know what money they were getting. How can you plan if you don't know what your budget is going to be? think about those individuals, those not civil servants, but those people who work in these agencies. How can they plan? They are worried about their jobs, and they shouldn't be in this situation. I believe in long-term planning, and I plead with the Treasury Minister. I'm going to meet her finally, I hope on the 13th of December. I haven't been able to meet with her before. I understand she's busy, but there are other assistant ministers and I could have met other people. I wanted genuinely to find solutions. As a Treasury Minister of the past, I met with every member if they wanted to discuss an amendment and to try and find the least worst way of funding it. And I've seen amendments being effectively being in the worst possible position, almost a threatening position, not a threatening in a violent way or anything like that, but in a way that meant the alternative was completely unpalatable. I believe there are solutions. We are an island that has strong public finances. And I'm worried about the future. I'm worried that it is going to be the reality, as Deputy Ayok so wisely said, and Deputy Ward wisely said. I don't understand why members of the government are not aware that there is an unfolding crisis in construction. The order books are thin, they're non-existent. Now that's a combination of factors, a lack of planning, lack of actual projects, but there's nothing. I'm really worried, if it's true what I'm hearing on the doorsteps of my constituents, that there is no capital projects and it's all the subcontractors that are going to be affected. I'm really worried. We're already seeing 3 construction firms fail. That means a slow in the capacity. And actually, if I was government, I'd be getting on and moving some of that capacity, and I'd be getting great value for 2 youth centres, both Lascay and St Helier, and I'd be doing like we did in the fiscal stimulus. I'm not saying everything we did was perfect, but we got on and we delivered projects at good value. There's a lot to do. This budget fails and dealing with the high cost of living. The 20 million, I just don't know what to say about how that should be scrutinised. It has not been scrutinised, and that it fails the accountability. I'm afraid to say, sir, that this is a budget of missed opportunities. It is maybe a consensus which keeps the Chief Minister happy, but it doesn't keep the people that I represent happy. It is neither one thing nor the other, and it is a mix of things, and it's an unholy socialist budget by a minister who's been an economic development minister, who's a neoliberal, apparently a pro-business person. There are some awful things going on in our island, and I cite cannabis. I brought an amendment and I lost it because of a procedural issue. I don't think that was my fault. Islands deserves better, sir. I have never, ever voted against a budget, but I cannot bring my heart or soul or my brain to vote for this budget. It breaks my heart to say that this budget, after listening to the debate, and I'm being looked at by in dagger looks from the Chief Minister, I'm sorry, I cannot support a budget after the farce that I've seen, after the deals that I've been seeing, after the failure to get Lascay, after the failure to get a plan for Five Oaks, after a failure of all sorts of amendments failed. Every single one of the amendments has failed. So effectively, we've got backbenchers who will go home, scrutiny members, who will have said, well, actually, what have we achieved? Well, I know that we've achieved the public that have been listening, and I've had some very interesting calls, very interesting. I sought no publicity for my stamp duty amendments, but I have been inundated by people that said, that could have made a difference, and I don't think we've heard the end of it. I hope that in the next 12 months, as the year turns, we can commit to doing better. This government came into office saying that they were going to be transparent, open, more collaborative, more collegiate. Well, they've certainly been collegiate amongst themselves, but I don't quite know how, with rabbits being brought out of the hat and deals being done. But they haven't been certainly, as far as this member is concerned, and as members of scrutiny, they have not been collaborative. There has been no attempt to find a middle way. There's been no attempt even to understand the concerns that a member might have. and I'm not used to that. I always met with an amender, whether the government agreed with it or not, and found the least worst option so that there could be a debate. And this assembly was a debating chamber where the arguments could be heard and debates would be made and votes would be taken, not on a whip, but because it was the right thing to do. And I feel very uncomfortable that we have got the first time, I think, the Gref will tell me if I'm wrong, the first time ever a budget that is going to be proposed unamended, except the way the government wanted it. And pardon? There were some accepted amendments, that's one thing, but the government accepted them. But the government has not been succeeded. The government has succeeded in debating everything, in defeating everything, and I'm sorry.
Deputy Joseph, will you accept a point of clarification from Deputy Doublé?
Willingly, sir, if I'm allowed.
So
Yes,
can I raise
you
a
are.
point of order? It's a point of order. It seems there's a 15-minute time limit on the speeches, and if points of clarification are taken after a speech, it means that a member has a longer than 15-minute speech, and it's not question time. So it does raise a problem, I think, about procedure if one is taking points of clarification after you've finished your 15 minutes. It's not Deputy Joseph's fault, but it is a procedural problem.
Yes, I consider that, but I mean, members are encouraged to ask points of clarification towards the end of the speeches, and one wouldn't want to curtail members from using the 15 minutes, but I'll consider your point with regard to standing orders. Yes, Deputy Doublé.
Thank you. So I didn't want to interrupt the deputy during his speech. He mentioned the living wage scheme not being scrutinised, and I would ask if he could clarify whether he had been able to read the comments papers of Deputy Tadier's panel and my panel, and each of those includes several pages of scrutiny and findings and recommendations on that scheme. And had he had a chance to read those?
I hadn't, sir, and I apologise if I haven't. There's been an awful lot of paper, and all I know is that I attended a briefing on the Friday before the budget was done, and I didn't. If the scrutiny panels have done it, and if they've actually scrutinised the 20 million, then fine, but I haven't had a chance to read it because I've been so seized upon my own amendments, which I failed all of them.
So,
Your point, Secretary, sorry, forgive me. Under Standing Order 104A, the length of a member's speech shall not be taken to include any time during which the member speaking has agreed to give way in accordance with Standing Order 101.
That's fine. So could I just point out that there could easily be 9 points of clarification from my 9 party members after a 15-minute speech that I give, and we could be here all day, in which it could be an abuse of power, and not to mention the other 9 interventions you get from members making
Just a point of order you're raising, or
it is a point of order, sir, because I think it needs consideration from the chair about how it's applied in future, sir. So if
yes, all right. Southern?
So would it be appropriate to remind us that 15 minutes is not a target?
Well, I endorse your observation.
Sir, can I just make a
Deputy
point which might assist members? I wanted to let members know that I will be asking for Amendment 2 to P72 to be debated. That's the one that relates to distillers' relief. So I just thought I should let people know that now in terms of planning ahead.
We'll reach that in due course. Yes, Conor St John.
Thank you, sir. I won't trouble the clock, I don't think. Sir, we've heard today about a lack of action, sir. Well, I don't recognise that. And in fact, I don't believe it's a true reflection of the very hard efforts of so many people across the public service and across this House. Each and every day, sir, I see many people going above and beyond. So I've enjoyed working with my scrutiny panel for the last 10 months, and I'm pleased that they've accepted a number of invitations and opportunities to see work that is done by the department. We still have lots of work to do. So I don't want to reopen the debates about Lascaux, but we've had it mentioned a couple of times today. So I'd remind people that that project was not shovel ready, as was described yesterday. So, and I would happily join the Chief Minister when he goes back to Lascaux to have a look and see the consequence of the promise I made to him this morning. So I'd like to remind members that we're currently working on an over £8 million investment at Oakfield. That is sporting facilities, sir. That's in the east of the island, sir, and that work is underway. So much needed facility for both young and old alike. In terms of liquid waste, that was mentioned by the chair of the scrutiny panel, as I've said at panel hearings, I look forward to working with the panel and other members to bring both a liquid and solid waste strategy to the Assembly. The skate park monies were mentioned. Sir, at no time have I agreed to delay the skate park, sir, and Treasury assure me that the money is there. We were asked about the public realm budget. We've accepted the amendment, sir, for £100,000 to be used on the West of Ireland plan, so I think that's a good use of money, and it's a very small proportion of our £2.5 million, and I think that's an example of us trying to work with members to achieve something for the greater good. I actually had requests for 140% of my public realm budget, so I was pleased to do a small amount. And I share the enthusiasm of the chair and her members of the scrutiny panel for the redevelopment of Fort Region. We've all had many tough decisions to make, and I just wanted to give Deputy Renouf some assurance that the Council of Ministers does challenge the Health Minister, just like all other ministers are challenged and held to account. So there is robust debate, discussion. It tends to happen around the table, and I can assure people that it still happens. And I'd also say that, sir, that last year we voted extra money for health, and there were concerns then about transparency. I'm very happy with where we are. The Deputy IO mentioned about vehicle testing and sea defences. It's my decision, sir, to kick vehicle testing down the road, sir. We've got other priorities. We are working on road safety, and there's some good progress being made there, including a tyre safety report, which will be out in a couple of weeks' time. And I'm pleased with the progress the team are making. In terms of sea defences, sir, a lot of work has been done on sea defences, and that work continues. And included in that, sir, is widespread consultation with stakeholders. Only last week I attended a briefing by the team to the local engineers on the subject. And on page 59 of the report to the budget, Shoreline Management Plan for Hovdepar, for the first time, this budget includes estimated costs for the implementation of the Coastal Flood Alleviation Project at Hovdepar. So that work is underway, it's going ahead, and we have around £1.35 million this year in the rolling vote to make sure that work is done. Deputy Joseph spoke about the construction industry. So it's another area that I've been involved in, and there's some terrific work being done about coordinating the programmes of not only the government, but also the arm's length organisations. And there's a thing called the ICE programme, sir, which has been shared with my panel and the industry, and it looks at where we've got peaks and troughs within the construction industry. And I'll remind members of the significant investment in drainage, for example. Earlier this week, we heard about the need to support the construction industry, and only yesterday we had people arguing against us buying a property. Buying a property, sir, will see money go back into development companies, which they can reinvest into other programmes, sir. So I'd say that was a very good move. And in terms of Five Oaks, sir, which we just heard about, again, earlier this week, the Deputy Ozov, earlier today, I think, apologised for his failure with Five Oaks. I don't think that's a government failure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Conor. Does any other member speak on the government plan as amended? Yes, Deputy Morrell.
Thank you, sir. And thank all members for speaking. It's been very interesting listening to the speeches. I wanted to address really quite directly the economic elements of the plan, particularly with regard to my department, and also their interaction with health. And I will start with the health side of it. It is a fact, and I said this in a previous speech this week, that we have a changing demographic, which is going to lead to greater healthcare costs. And we also know as a fact that for the last few years, the health budget has repeatedly been overspent. I cannot, because I'm not health minister, I'm not chief minister, I haven't delved into these matters deeply myself. But on the surface, it to me seems that what we are seeing, as I said the other day, is the ageing population, the kind of the results or the impacts of an ageing population hitting home. We have said in the Future Economy programme that as the population balance changes and becomes older, there will be higher healthcare costs. And so this budget, no question about it, does allocate greater funding to that healthcare situation. And that, to me, should open all of our eyes to the impact of the ageing population. Dealing with it is the right thing to do. We need to provide the funding. We also obviously need to restructure the health system to make sure that it can deliver as efficiently and as effectively as possible. And it seems to me that that is what the Health Minister is attempting to do. And he has drawn up a plan, he has publicised that plan, and he is acting on it. And that is the right thing to do. Of course, as a result of that, we have seen other departments find it tougher in terms of growth. And, the Economy Department is one of those. But that said, and I am very pleased, we are equally supporting the economy in different ways. The living wage will provide support for the economy, both in the actual greater amount of money into islanders' pockets, which will help them deal with the cost of living and will help them live in Jersey in a dignified manner, which is absolutely right, but also the support that we are providing to businesses, which I am convinced will help us move to that more resilient and robust economy that we do need for the future. I think it's really important that when we look at the way that £10 million a year is being spent, it is being spent on matters that help businesses invest in themselves, help businesses focus on productivity, focus on making themselves absolutely more resilient for the future so they can be better businesses in the future. And it's not just businesses, and I must correct myself sometimes, this is all organisations, this includes charities and other third sector organisations. They are all able to partake of this £10 million per year funding. And that's absolutely right. And so from that perspective, I think it is wrong to look at this government plan as being inappropriate for the economy. It is different in its way of dealing with the economy. It isn't funding the Economy Department directly in the way that it perhaps would have in the past, but it is doing so in a more indirect manner. But we are purposing that money for absolutely the right things. I know Deputy Ayer was concerned about the visitor economy, and he's right. I'm pleased that Deputy Ayer is concerned about the visitor economy because I am concerned about the visitor economy. But we have £2 million a year extra for promoting the island, particularly in the shoulder and the winter months. And on top of that, we have £1 million a year extra for developing new air routes and new links to bring people to these islands. Both of those matters are significant contributions, given that Visit Jersey's funding has been £5 million a year for 10 years. In other words, it's been in decline for 10 years because it's not been adjusted for inflation. Visit Jersey is now going to have an extra £2 million a year to spend on publicising the island and bringing new visitors to the island. And that is absolutely a shot in the arm for the visitor economy. It's a really good thing. It is direct support for the visitor economy, and it's something I'm really proud of. And certainly, and I appreciate the many reasons Deputy Balash brought his amendment. From my perspective, I didn't want that amendment to succeed because I wanted to be able to deliver that money to the visitor economy. And the comments and the messages I received back from people who work in the visitor economy yesterday were hugely relieved that that amendment didn't pass because they understand that this money is going to be transformative for the visitor economy. And so this budget really helps our tourism industry. There's no question about it. And that's a superb move forward. We are also at the same time helping the agriculture and fishing industries deal with the living wage. That's incredibly important because, again, we've done so much work since 2018 on rebuilding the agriculture, the support for agriculture and fisheries, well, delivering for the first time ever support for fisheries, that it would have been awful if this increase in the minimum wage was to threaten that. But I'm delighted that working with the Social Security Minister, we have made sure that that isn't a threat anymore. And that's really, really important. And I'm pleased that the Social Security Minister has worked diligently with me to make sure that it isn't a threat. The reason I have spoken is because I want people to understand that whilst it is not direct, perhaps, in the way previously you would have seen growth in the Economy Department's budget, etc., the support is there for the economy. The support is there for the visitor economy. It's also there for apprenticeships and training. That's absolutely vital. We've got I think, £2 million a year for training over 2 years to support apprenticeships. I've been speaking to the construction sector. They were really concerned about apprenticeships after us removing the trainee rate from the minimum wage. It's something that I still will see as a mistake, because I know that young people are losing opportunities as a result of there no longer being a trainee rate. But we are helping to mitigate that, because that was a decision of the Assembly, and so it stands. We are helping to mitigate that by providing £2 million a year over the next 2 years, each year over the next 2 years, to support apprenticeships. That's going to be hugely important to encourage businesses to take on trainees and apprentices in a way that they were worried about and they are no longer worried about. And so I want to give this, this budget, this government plan, a vote of confidence from my perspective in the Economy Department. We are using it in a way that will support the economy, and I believe as a result of this, we're going to have a much fitter economy for the future and dealing with those big problems that we identify in the Future Economy Programme, which principally centre around the ageing population and that demographic change. We are dealing with that, and I think that's absolutely the right thing to do. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Does any other member speak on this proposition as amended? In that case, I call upon the Minister to reply. Minister.
Thank you, sir. So this is the first budget of this government, serving as a financial plan of action to deliver on the ambitions set out in the Common Strategic Policy over the next 2 years. It also lays the groundwork for additional measures to strengthen our long-term financial stability. It is a balanced, actionable plan that prioritises delivery, sustainability and resilience for the people of Jersey. Sorry, I just see that some of the people that I would have liked to respond to are not in the Assembly. I would like to thank all members for their contributions, not only to this debate, but also for their dedicated efforts to review, understand and scrutinise the plan since it was lodged in August. In particular, I would like to thank all of those who have submitted amendments. I also thank officials in the Executive, in Scrutiny and in the GREF for the support of all members in the compilation, scrutiny and debate of the budget. So a couple of members have talked about collaboration and have suggested ministers failing to engage with them. I've said several times that if a member wishes to bring a proposition, I am very happy to discuss it in advance so that we can discuss it before it's lodged and agree a proposition that council ministers can accept from the outset. That offer remains. I am very happy to discuss with anybody who is bringing an amendment, whether to a future budget or to a general amendment in future, because it would be quite nice to bring forward proposals and propositions that we can accept. Scrutiny chairs have covered some of the content of their reports in their speeches, and we will now consider the recommendations in those reports. It is important that the democratic process works well, and we will reflect on the views of scrutiny when planning for next year's debate. It is vital that we heed FPP advice to curtail the growth in day-to-day spending. I have previously called on members to do their part, and I am pleased that this has been delivered through our decisions over the past few days. While the debate has at times been passionate, we have, through our democratic process, adopted 12 amendments from scrutiny and backbenchers into the budget. Those cover further increases to vehicle emissions duties to support our carbon neutral objectives, additional support for the Connect Me programme, to progress with the play strategy and transparency around Fort Regent, about digital services and an ombudsperson, about Pillar 2 and sustainable finance commitments, enhanced support for apprenticeships and resources for the termination of pregnancy workstream, matched funding with the parish of St Helier for neighbourhood improvement programmes, additional funding for Statistics Jersey to continue the business tendency survey, and just this morning, the West of Ireland Master Plan. These initiatives strengthen our budget and demonstrate the collective commitment of this Assembly to improving Islanders' lives. This budget demonstrates our commitment to financial prudence and sustainable public finance with a strong focus on delivering results. And Deputy Reniff, at lunchtime today, I spoke to someone in Broad Street who came to speak to me to say goodbye, having been made redundant from their job in communications. There is nothing now for them in the public service, and they will be very shortly unemployed. So I hope that gives you some comfort, because it breaks my heart. This budget does not include unfunded proposals, and whilst it's tight, it balances the books while allowing the necessary investments to progress the common strategic priorities of the Assembly and address the financial challenges facing our healthcare service. Deputy Jeune has raised concerns around the short-term focus of the budget, but I'm afraid I can't agree. Looking to the future, this budget sets a path to grow our strategic reserve and stabilisation funds, ensuring we have robust protection against economic uncertainty. We have been clear about Pillar 2, about the benefits and the risks that arise as a result of that. Importantly, we remain committed to not using Pillar 2 receipts for ongoing departmental spending, preserving them for longer-term investments in the island's infrastructure, economy and stability. The budget puts in place the approvals to start building our new healthcare facilities with a pragmatic funding strategy that doesn't place an undue burden on future generations. We must start building to deliver the hospital that islanders need, deserve and want. When I mentioned HS2 this morning, it was to try to clarify for members the scale of the spend in terms of Jersey's finance. And I think the white elephant would be in not doing anything and allowing our current hospital to deteriorate further to the point where it becomes absolutely unfit for purpose. The notion that the spend is uncontrolled or unrestrained is entirely incorrect. And the review panel has been given extensive details of our procurement strategies and controls. Our capital programme takes a pragmatic, deliverable approach in line with the recommendations of the FPP. Despite what some members may fear, money has not been lost. While timings have changed, money is still available at the same levels, or indeed in some cases like Montalabe, increased to ensure the successful delivery of the project. I understand that some members may not agree with this reprioritisation, but hopefully members will recognise that the overall programme is designed to deliver investment in our estate, infrastructure and other assets that islanders expect and indeed need. Previous plans introduced mechanisms that allowed more flexibility to ensure that capital projects were progressed quickly in a more agile way. We will continue to use these to maximise delivery for islanders. In response to Deputy Ozuf, although I think others have already commented in their speeches, cost of living was very much at the forefront of the Council of Ministers' minds in settling this budget. We've increased tax thresholds, we've increased tax allowances, we're introducing a living wage. We have kept our promise to try to keep duties and charges as low as possible. Income support and pensions, while not part of this budget, income support and pensions will be uprated as normal. Benefits are all being maintained. There is ample safety net in Jersey for people who are struggling. And as the Minister said earlier, if people are struggling, please go and see CLS and seek advice and help. We have now had several debates regarding the Social Security Fund. Deputy Moore wasn't willing to stand aside for a point of clarification, so if I can clarify the concern now. Deputy Moore's speech indicated that we were taking money from the HIF, which is the Health Insurance Fund. We are not taking money from the Health Insurance Fund. That is an entirely separate fund, and the 10 million that we've discussed is coming from the Social Security Fund. I do recognise and sympathise with the strong views of members, and that some will be disappointed with the outcome of this year's debates. While I know not all members agree, the forecasts in the budget and the results of the actuarial review show that the fund is in good health and that pensions are not at risk. We have heard of the wise actions of previous assemblies to build the fund and the Social Security Reserve Fund, and we are indeed in an enviable position compared to other jurisdictions. And that's one of the reasons why I find it intensely disappointing when a member suggests that the island is anywhere near bankruptcy. Deputy Reniff is not the first person to use that word in this Assembly about the island's finances, and it's deeply unfortunate. We are a globally well-regarded international finance centre. We are an AA-rated jurisdiction, and it's unhelpful.
Will the Minister give way?
Yes, I will.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Can the Minister remind me exactly when I did say that this island was bankrupt? I don't believe I ever said it.
Sir, I believed I very clearly heard Deputy Reniff describe the island's finances as being close to bankruptcy. I thought I heard that word, perhaps I missed, in which case I apologise. But we are very far from bankrupt, and it's unhelpful to use that word in the context of our finances.
I'm not trying to interrupt the Minister, but would you give way on the issue, another issue, just be helpful? The point that I was trying to make to the Minister, which is not answered by her answers, is the cost of living is not about just giving more people money by tax relief. It's lowering the cost of goods and services in Jersey. And if that's what the point I'm trying to make. It's lowering the cost of goods and services. That's what's not in this budget.
Yes, Minister.
I think government, I'm not quite sure how, well, I'm sure clearly the Minister, the former Treasury Minister, who is of much greater experience than I, will have ideas as to how government can lower prices. The Minister for Sustainable Economic Development has spoken about what we're doing with economic development, and we have tried within our realm, within our scope, to maintain, to keep duties. We have frozen duties on alcohol and petrol. I'm sorry if that's not sufficient in terms of if you want me to reduce the cost of a loaf of bread. I'm not quite sure how we do that. Sorry, sir. Finally, I find it surprising that people have any concern that the Social Security Reserve Fund, which has over £2 billion and a very expertly managed portfolio, should not buy the new government building. The building is already worth more than the purchase price, and it's like saying to someone, no, of course you can't buy a house, just stay and pay rent. Why on earth would we want government to pay rent to a private sector landlord when we could pay rent to a publicly owned fund and keep the money within the public purse? I just simply cannot understand why that is at all troubling. The fund has the investment, we're not taking money out, we are swapping one asset class with the other, as I said yesterday, and as I said yesterday, it's a complete no-brainer. This budget demonstrates a clear commitment to delivering on our CSP objectives, maintaining sustainable public finances and building a stronger future for Jersey. Once again, I thank members of the Assembly for their engagement and dedication in shaping this important plan. We have laid a solid foundation of the challenges ahead, and I look forward to working with all of you to deliver on the ambition we have set out this week. So, creating a government plan, a budget such as this, is a complex and difficult job. Whatever members may think, it is a huge piece of work. I would like to thank ministers for their efforts. It was not easy reaching some of the decisions that we had to reach, and I thank ministers for all their forbearance in that effort. I thank all the scrutiny panels again and all those who submitted amendments. I thank all officers, scrutiny, and in all departments, but particularly I would like to thank the Treasury team, who have worked exceptionally hard to bring this together over the summer, to deal with the amendments, to deal with all the comments. We are fortunate in having very capable, experienced, and crucially competent, very competent people advising us. I'm grateful for all their hard work, and they have my endless gratitude. Sir, I move the proposition and ask for the appel.
Thank you, Minister. The appel has been called for. Members are invited to return to their seats. I ask the greffier to open the voting. If all members present in the chamber and present remotely have had the chance to cast their votes, I ask the greffier to close the voting. Announce that the plan has been adopted. 31 votes pour, 13 votes contre. Yes.
Those members voting contre, the Connotab of St Lawrence and St Clement, and Deputies Ayer, Gardner, Moore, Osoph, War, Miles, Renouf, Jearn, Alex Curtis, Wilson and Andrews.
Now move on to the draft Finance 2025 Budget Jersey Law lodged by the Minister for Treasury and Resources. The main respondent is the Chair of the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel. I ask the greffier to read the citation.
Draft Finance 2025 Budget Jersey Law 2000, a law to set the standard rate of income tax for 2025 and to implement parts of the Budget Government Plan 2025 to 2028 by amending the Income Tax Jersey Law 1961, the Customs and Excise Jersey Law 1999, the Goods and Services Tax Jersey Law 2007, the Revenue Administration Jersey Law 2019, the Stamp Duties and Fees Jersey Law 1998, the Taxation Land Transaction Jersey Law 2009, and to make amendments to secondary legislation. The States, subject to the sanction of His Most Excellent Majesty and Council, have adopted the following law.
Minister, do you wish to propose the principles?
Sir, yes, thank you. Sir, this legislation enacts the changes agreed by the Assembly in the budget, including the new thresholds and allowances for income tax, amendments to GST and stamp duty, and the excise duties, including the vehicle emissions duties, as amended. In addition, the Council of Ministers are proposing an amendment to the finance law that was not included in the budget. This is to bring in changes regarding the Commissioners of Appeal by order. As the majority of these measures have already been discussed, I don't wish to take up any unnecessary time, and I commend the changes in the finance law to the Assembly in principle. Sir, I move the principles. Thank you.
Are the principles seconded? Yes, sir. Does any member speak on the principles? Those members in favour of adopting the principles kindly show. Thank you.
Appel, please, sir.
Those against? The principles, sorry. Was the appel called for? I didn't hear that, sorry. The appel has been called for. Members are invited to return to their seats. I invite the greffier to open the voting on adopting or rejecting, as the case may be, the principles of the draft finance law. All members present and attending remotely have had the chance of casting their votes, and ask the greffier to close the voting. The principles have been adopted. 35 votes pour, 6 votes contra, and 2 abstentions. Minister, how do you wish to propose the articles in second reading? There are amendments to the law. As you know, there's an amendment to Article 22 and 23 in order to implement Amendment 29 of the government plan in relation to small distillers. And there's another amendment to Article 25, which implements the agreement in relation to vehicle excise duty, which was part of the plan adopted. And finally, there's a third amendment, which is not consequential to amendments on the government plan. Do you wish to first invite the Assembly to consider the first 21 articles not affected by any amendment?
Yes, sir, please, thank you.
Yes. So you propose Articles 1 to 21 inclusive in second reading?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Is that seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak in relation to the first 21 articles in second reading? Those in favour of adopting Articles 1 to 21 kindly show. Thank you very much. Articles 1 to 21 are adopted in second reading. Minister, moving on to Articles 22 and 23, do you wish to deal with them now, propose them?
Yes, sir. Articles 22 and 23 are interconnected in the law and need to be taken together, please.
And there is a second amendment in relation to this, and this is the amendments in relation to the small distillers, is that right?
That's right, sir. We discussed this yesterday, and we discussed in particular in the budget that there was an amendment which changes the figure of 40,000 to 20,000.
Before you address it, I need to invite the... well, first of all, do you wish to read Articles 22 and 23 as amended by your amendment?
Yes, please, sir.
Does any member object to that course of action?
Sir, I think Deputy Reniff indicated he wished to debate these changes.
You wish to debate the amendment, do you? Yes, in that case, I invite the greffier to read the amendment.
And sir, thank you. I will also once again recuse myself on the grounds stated yesterday.
Thank you, Deputy. This is the second amendment, is the amendment to Articles 22 and 23.
Yes, that is the one.
Yes, I invite the greffier to read the amendment.
Page 22, Article 22. 1. After paragraph 1, insert 2. After the definition customs duty, insert distilled spirits means spirits that are produced or manufactured by a person by A, distilling with a still fermented agricultural product, or B, distilling with a still other spirits that are obtained but not produced by that person, and renumber the subsequent paragraphs accordingly. 2. Delete paragraphs 4 and 5, renumbered as paragraphs 5 and 6, and renumber the subsequent paragraphs accordingly. Page 23, Article 23. 1. In paragraph 2, A, in substituted clause A, delete primary, and B, delete substituted clause AA. 2. After paragraph 2, insert 3. In paragraph 1B, after other spirits, insert including other distilled spirits, and renumber the subsequent paragraphs and cross-references accordingly. 3. In paragraph 3, renumbered as paragraph 4, in inserted subparagraph 2A, in the opening words for in relation to spirits, substitute in relation to distilled spirits, and B, in clause B, 1, for spirits, substitute distilled and other spirits, and 2, for 40,000 litres, substitute 20,000 litres.
Yes, Minister.
Thank you, sir. So this was discussed to some extent yesterday afternoon in the context of Amendment 29 to the budget. And I explained that initially our proposal had been, we have historically had a reduced rate for small distillers. And those are distillers who, in the original definition, who distill directly from agricultural products such as apples or wheat. And they have a discount of 50% of the standard rate. What we intended to do originally was to then create a second category for distillers who bought in ready distilled spirits and then rectified it or compounded it in some way to create a new form of gin or rum, for example. And that second category of distiller, we're going to be given a discount, it was a 75, they would pay 75% of the rate, which is a 25% discount. This is intended to support the small craft distilling industry. And we initially intended to increase the volume of production to 40,000 litres of pure alcohol. Following some further discussions and other developments locally, we decided to give all small distillers the rate of 50%, but that we would then reduce the level of production to 20,000 litres. Both the reduced rate of 50% would be available to any small producer that meets the volume criteria of less than 20,000 litres of pure alcohol. So we have one reduced rate of 50%, which applies to any distiller, whether they distill from first principles, if you like, or from imported spirit. And that is the gist of the amendment, sir.
Is the amendment seconded? Yes, sir. Does anyone wish to speak on the amendment? Deputy Renner.
Yes, sir, thank you. I find myself at least three disadvantages here, I think. First of all, I wasn't here last night for the debate on Amendment 29. Second, I'm tired, and I'm speaking to an assembly that I think is also probably pretty tired on a complex amendment. I would ask a point of clarification initially before I go further, which is it possible to take the vote in parts, which would include taking it all the parts up to the very final part, the 40,000 litres substitute 20,000 litres, so that we would take separately the first 95% of the amendment, and then a separate vote on the 40,000 litres to substitute 20,000 litres. The reason being that the Assembly did vote yesterday to make that 40,000 litre to 20,000 litres change. So voting for that bit would cement the decision of last night, as I understand it. It is the bits before that that are problematic.
So which part do you want to take separately again, Deputy Renner?
So all the parts up to the very final part of page 23, Article 23, all the way down to Part BI. And then just the very final part, the 40,000 litres substitute 20,000 litres taken separately. Just that very final clause.
Yes, well, that is possible. That can be done, yes. It can be two separate votes.
Thank you for that, sir. Sir, I wanted to stand on this because I do think this is a backward step. I think this is a mistake. And it's a mistake because I think it's founded on a fundamental first principles that are wrong. It does seem to me that there must have been some heavy last-minute lobbying on this, because the government had initially, over a very long period of time, arrived at a settled position on this and put forward into the budget a compromise position that seemed to be sensible and acceptable. And it had been clearly consulted on over a long period of time. But now, at the very last minute, and it really was the last minute, I think it was the 29th Amendment, wasn't it? So it really was the last minute, this proposal came through. And I don't think it's been thought through or considered properly by the government, and certainly not by the Assembly yet. The reason why I say it's a category, there's a sort of category error here, is it categorises two things together that are clearly not the same. It categorises together distilling that is based on distilling from raw products and distilling, rectifying, as it's known, the addition of material to industrially produced alcohol. Those are two clearly very, very different things, and very different business models are built on those two things. And therefore, it seems to me to be wrong in principle to have a categorization in duty that treats them as if they're the same. They're clearly not the same. Now, that has significance because businesses have been built on those differential rates of duty. And we've heard from one of them, two of them, I think, but we certainly La Robeline, I believe, was quoted yesterday. We've heard from them. They've built business models on these. So that's, so we should think very, very hard, I think, about just pulling the rug from underneath established businesses that have built themselves up over many years based on a certain level of duty. I think it's something we should be exceptionally cautious about. I think the risks are that we kill at birth a nascent craft industry in the island. It is not fair competition to have the same duty rate for producers who buy in alcohol in bulk and then add things to it, and producers who make alcohol on a craft basis. I think we should, as an island, as part of that whole genuine Jersey thing, part of the way that we want to support new products in the rural sector and so on, we should be trying to build up that use of local products to create an alcohol product, to create alcohol, which then goes on to become a product. Not so much. I mean, the original proposals did offer some relief to the bulk buyers in of alcohol, the 75% rate, the 25% deduction. That was sensible. That offered something to those people. But it kept a 50% discount rate for the very small, for the people who started with the base product. That was a sensible compromise. It recognised essentially three different categories: normal alcohol duty relief, normal alcohol duty rather for people who make who are bringing in alcohol and selling it, a rate for the rectifiers, the people who bring in bulk alcohol and convert it into a product, and a rate for people who start from scratch. That seemed to me to be very clear. I note that the JHA submission to the scrutiny panel said, "We are pleased that the Treasury has recognised the contribution this small but growing sector is making to the economy, and this measure is welcomed." So I think there was a slight smokescreen in the original proposal which was talking about harmonisation across the Channel Islands. I can't see how that applies. I mean, distillers in Jersey aren't going to benefit particularly from harmonisation of their rates with Guernsey. It doesn't seem to make much sense. And to the extent that it might apply, it might reinforce the sense in which this works best for big bulk producers, because they might be bringing in the alcohol from outside to both islands and might find it convenient to have the same rate. So if anything, that argument to me goes against the principle. The final point I'd make is I don't think there's any risk in rejecting this amendment, because the original proposals in the budget, which is what we will default to if this amendment is rejected, the original proposals had been thought through. They were, until about a week ago, the settled position of the government. They can't have been that bad. So why can't we just go back to those proposals, reject the proposals as they are now, go back to the original set of proposals the government brought forward, which were well thought through, and then if that is still a problem, we can always next year come back with a change that brings in this harmonisation that is claimed to be so useful. I don't buy it myself, but there is no risk. There is no risk because the original proposals, unamended, are reasonable, good, thought through, well consulted on, and so on. And what we've had is a last-minute lobbying operation, it seems to me, to try and change them. So I think, the reason why I wanted to take it in parts is because I do think the reduction to 20,000 litres for these reliefs is a good idea. Members may not, that's fine, but it would cement that. And, and I think that that combination, to me, is the best one, that reject the amended proposals, which have been put through very fast without any sort of attempt for the opportunity for us to really think them all through, and but stick with the reduction of 20,000 to 20,000. It doesn't make sense to treat two very different products in the same, with the same duty. Thank you very much.
Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. And I thank the Deputy for raising this issue, but what I'm going to say is probably going to come as something of a surprise, having listened to the arguments there, which I completely understand, because that's probably where I understood things to be until relatively recently. The budget as original, and actually I'll start from a very different place, because it's a place that most members probably won't expect me to start at. I'll start with the World Trade Organization. Now, the World Trade Organization, understandably, is, as most members will understand, is about free trade between countries, and therefore doesn't allow protectionism of particular goods, unless when Jersey joined the WTO 4 years ago, we did get derogations around milk in order to make sure that we could still protect the Jersey herd, but those derogations had to be in at the time of joining. After that, we have to maintain open markets to goods from around the world. And so we aren't allowed to protect particular areas at the expense of international trade. That really is the cause of this change. And I can understand members wondering why on earth that isn't in any way relevant. Well, the initial ask, so we had this 50% distillers rate, but the 50% distillers rate was on the grain to glass element, as Deputy Renouf has explained, you know, taking your grain and turning that ultimately into a spirit to be consumed from the very raw material all the way through to the finished product. And that is a laborious and costly process, there's no question. But we also, I believe, we also had a limit on the amount of production in order to be able to access that rate, and the limit, I believe, was 2,000 litres a year, which is not a great deal. That limit stopped our producers exporting because they weren't basically able to produce enough to export. So the request was, could we increase the limit? And that's where the 40,000 litres came from. That's plenty to enable an export industry. And as Deputy Renouf suggested, quite rightly said, we thought, well, because it's a different process, for those who import base alcohol, distill it once to bring through flavourings, etc., because that is a less laborious process, we'll put that on a differential rate for duty for 25%. And I agree, I thought everything was fine at that point. But then it was brought to our attention that because we aren't allowed to set one duty rate for that produced in the island and a different duty rate for that produced outside the island and imported, that for small producers outside the island, and there were named brands that apparently do target the island in this particular way, for small producers outside the island who do grain to glass, they then have a competitive advantage over producers who don't do grain to glass. So quite simply, we can, having increased the limit from 2,000 to 40,000 or even 20,000 litres produced, any British or European producer of grain to glass alcohol that produced up to 20,000 litres would absolutely be able to bring their goods here to Jersey, get the 50% duty discount, and for those local businesses that were importing base alcohol and turning that into gin or vodka, flavoured vodkas, etc., they would get less of a duty discount than those being imported. And so that there is where the issue lies. Because what the first system did, and I wasn't fully appreciative of this at first, was actually provide a competitive advantage for importation over local production. And that's the problem. So this change has been made. Yes, it sets both grain to glass distillers and importers, distiller and flavourers in Jersey. It sets them on the same basis, which wasn't quite the case before. But having increased the amount of production that duty reduction can be applied to, we are opening the market up locally as well to competition from outside. And we are in danger with that first system of a 25 and 50% duty rate of putting a much larger section of the industry in peril from imports than we would be helping by by maintaining the way it was before. So I know this is relatively technical, and I do apologise for that, but there are good reasons. What we are trying to do with this flat rate across the board is make sure that Jersey businesses, whether they are grain to glass or importers and flavourers, I'll call them for want of a better word, we are making sure that they are able to compete against external competition across the board. And that means we're protecting, or we're supporting the whole of the industry rather than just one very small part of that industry. So this isn't about, and I believe those companies which have been emailing us about this, they are obviously, and understandably, they're thinking about internal local competition with each other. But what we are thinking about is that wider external competition that could have a big impact on all of them, regardless of whether they're grain to glass or not. And that's what this change does. I believe there's going to be may I give way? I'm just looking at the Deputy Renner, so whilst I take a pause, maybe.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to hear the Minister has given way, and I'm very grateful to him. He saw me looking poised, ready to go. Could he explain how confident he is and whether he has this is a theoretical possibility, or whether he believes that there is indeed a sort of stream of people waiting to bring alcohol in under this duty relief?
Yes. I thank the Deputy for that clarification. We believe this is a very real possibility. We know of at least one company in a European country which has targeted the island purposefully in this way in the past and is set up as a grain to glass distillery and operates at a level small enough to be able to import to the island and has done so in the past. And we believe they would be ready to go and take advantage of this differential. I am also seeing Deputy Moore looking like she might want a clarification. If so, I'm willing to give way if that's the case.
So I wasn't intending to make this a question and answer session. I was going to merely speak and assume that perhaps an Assistant Minister might be able to clarify further questions if the Minister's already spoken.
Thank you. Yes, we do believe at least one company, but possibly more, are set up to exploit this differential. That is the case. And they have a Jersey connection, but they operate outside of the island and they do their distilling outside the island and would be importing. They have done in the past. They're a named brand and they do that. I have been asked why this reduction advantages external importers. The reason, let me explain again from the beginning, and I apologise, I have to repeat myself. By increasing the amount of production that is eligible for this discount, we are opening the island up to, we are doing that to enable production that can be exported. So we're trying to grow an industry in Jersey that wants to export and sell. And that's where the Guernsey bit comes in. The Guernsey market is part of one of the markets we believe Jersey producers want to move into, as well as potentially the UK or Europe. So we have increased the amount of alcohol that can be produced and be eligible for this duty. By doing that, that makes it possible, because we aren't able to protect Jersey's market, that makes it possible for external producers who produce, in this case, 20,000 litres or less, to import into Jersey, for them to export into Jersey, and take advantage of exactly the same duty discounts. When there was a differential discount, 25% and 50%, that would mean that those external companies importing to Jersey would be able to take advantage of a 50% discount, whilst Jersey companies would be stuck on the 25% discount. And that is where the problem lay. And so by harmonising the discounts across both grain to glass and production and importer flavourers, as I call them, yes, it harmonises that and it puts them on an equal footing. What it does is it means that no Jersey businesses are at a disadvantage to export people who import into the island. Now, when this was raised, I did ask, but that, they're still going to be able to import and compete. But the local producers did feel that because of local brand strength and awareness, that they would be able to compete with them on an even footing, or they would not be able to compete with those importers on a footing where the importer gets a greater duty reduction than the local producer. And so from my perspective, I definitely thought, well, if your belief in your brand and the local desire to buy local is so strong, then I'm willing to go with that. They strongly do believe that their brands are strong enough locally to mean that they can keep that external competition out, so to speak, just purely in competitive terms. But if we were to give them only a 25% tax duty discount, but the imported spirits getting a 50% duty discount, then there would be a real problem because it wouldn't be a level playing field. If there are any, that's really the end of my speech. If there are any requests for clarification, now would be a good time to do it. Because whilst it's not meant to be a question and answer session, I can understand why there might be some requests for clarification.
Gentlemen, you did speak last night, didn't you, on this proposition, didn't you? You spoke yesterday on this proposition.
On the part in the budget, but this is a different proposition because that was in the budget debate. This is the Finance Act.
Well, I followed that, but it was a similar issue, wasn't it? It was the issues were
yes,
identical.
except that the 50%, 25% duty discount wasn't in the budget debate. It was only 40,000 litres, 20,000 litres, which is why yesterday, so I said that we were debating something yesterday which wasn't actually pertinent to yesterday's debate.
Yes, Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. I'm not sure that speech by...
Can I ask, I was going to ask a point of clarification. I thought you
Oh,
were
yes,
asking
perhaps,
for
yes, Deputy Miles, your point of clarification, yes.
Sorry, Deputy. Minister, I'm very grateful to you for giving away a second time. I'm very grateful to the Minister for giving away for a second time.
Yes.
The question I have is this. You've talked about a possible company that could import into the island and compete. Would it be fair to characterise that as a theoretical possibility that you could wait and see for a year to see whether it actually materialises before bringing in changed regulations?
Obviously, anything in the future is theoretical. So in that sense, literally, yes. But no, I don't believe so. So the information that's provided to me is that this company has absolutely focused on the Jersey market in the past, but because of the limits, didn't. It has sold in the Jersey market, and we believe it is ready to step in immediately, not in a year's time.
Any more clarification?
Obviously, this is belief. It is about a future hypothetical situation, so I could be wrong, but I don't believe so, and certainly the case was made strongly to me that it would be ready to go.
Any more points of clarification for Deputy?
Yes, sir.
Deputy
Thank you. Of course, you were talking about the WTO, or the Minister was talking about the WTO and the reason for this, and I was just wondering if there's been any analysis of the potential, those who are potentially going to come into the island and benefit from the relief that they themselves in their own countries are given a relief as well, and so therefore are given an advantage for where they brew their where they actually make their products.
I can't say that I am aware of any analysis that would be better asked of the Treasury Minister, I believe, rather than mine.
Clarification? On something like that, or do you want to speak?
Just to speak, sir, please.
Speak in due course. I think the next person who wanted to speak was, in fact, Deputy Moore. Is that right? Do you want to speak next? Yes, and then Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. Duty has been a really big part of our economy in centuries past. In fact, it probably was one of the reasons why we developed such a strong economy many years ago. Therefore, it is right and proper that we look at this very carefully. And perhaps the External Relations Minister will be able to assist the Assembly further in raising the WTO perspective and the rationale behind this change. It seems a great shame, sir, whilst I understand and am grateful to the Sustainable Economic Development Minister for providing us with his detailed explanation and fully appreciate the ability to attract a new market to the island, we do also want to protect our local brands. And given the very disappointing information that was circulated last week, I believe, from the External Relations Minister in relation to the decision of the United Kingdom with the CPTPP agreement on world trade, that the island will only be included for
goods rather than services, surely it appears logical that if we're going to push back in some way, then not being bound by this agreement or standing up for ourselves in relation to these agreements would be a necessary battleground. And so I feel deeply for our local producers, and I understand absolutely why they would want us to protect their industry, particularly as we're all aware that the cost base of doing so in our island economy is high, and therefore we naturally want to protect ourselves from outside competition, which can easily develop from a lower cost base. So I would be grateful if we could have some further clarification on that point of competing in the global market, and an explanation as to why ministers aren't prepared to properly protect our local markets against this international agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. I just have a couple of questions. One of them is related to the questions that Deputy Moore has asked. My first question is, why wasn't this explained yesterday when we were debating the amendment about the reduction from the 40,000 to the 20,000? It seems to have been dropped on us today in the finance law. And the second one, a rather blunt question, why are the World Trade Organization dictating policy to Jersey?
Thank you. Constable Brillard.
Thank you, sir. Given that we received communications from the cider producers only Tuesday, could the Minister confirm there has been consultation with the local industry? And on the basis of that communication, will there be any consideration to taking upon their views in due course, if not now? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Constable. Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. I'm desperately trying to follow the Minister's explanation. So really, I just wanted to know if I could ask him to explain or confirm that in this proposal, is he saying that
Sorry, may I ask the Deputy to give way very quickly?
Yes, sure.
Maybe the Deputy would like to clarify that I am not the Minister responsible for this, and so it's the Treasury and Resources Minister rather than the State, but I've had my speech, I can't respond.
No, it's not question time. Yes, but Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. I will raise just a comment then in whoever it's directed to, but thank you to the Minister for that clarification. Is this proposal about an offer to discount trade to distillers both on and off island, and that the same amount of discount will be applied to both sets of distillers if they want to trade in Jersey, and that the same... Sorry, sir.
You finished your question?
Sorry, I just wondered if the External Relations Minister wanted to say something then. Sorry, I'm really tired. I'm trying to get my head around this, to understand it, to give it some justice. But is the proposal that there are distillers who are wanting to trade by bringing product into the island, and there are people who have already got product in the island that they want to trade with, and that the discount rate that's being applied to their produce is going to be the same? And if so, is the discount that is being applied to them anti-competitive because actually the volumes that we're talking about cannot be produced by local producers in the way that perhaps those companies who are interested to come into Jersey will bring their produce into the island? Does that make sense?
Thank you, Deputy.
Thank you.
Does any other member speak on this amendment? Deputy Joseph, then Deputy Galls. Deputy Joseph.
Well, I was going to ask either that I don't like throwing in assistance to the Attorney General, but but if the Minister for External Relations can explain, because I don't understand and I'm uncomfortable, what the issue is in relation to the WTO. I can explain Deputy Miles's answer that you're not allowed to, under WTO rules, unfairly put tariffs on. So I think we're trying to advantage a local, the theory is we're trying to advantage a local business, but we're allowed to do that under the WTO because it's exceptional circumstances. But I think what I'm hearing from from Deputy Renouf and Deputy Moore is that it isn't achieving the objective that they want. Now, either I've got that wrong, but the Minister for External Relations was doing the job that I was, and I'm forgetful of the WTO obligations. But if this isn't working, can he please explain and assuage our concerns that it is going to work?
Yes, Deputy Gorst.
Shall I speak first, sir, and then the Attorney General can step in when I get it wrong? It is a little late to be starting to delve into the WTO, but members know that UK's membership has been extended to Jersey. At the crux of the matter, the Deputy is right. It's about non-discriminatory approach. And the issue is, as soon as you've raised from the 200 to what was the 40, now it's coming back down to 20 to try and manage some of the concern that the two, I think they're called grain-to-glass distillers, locally have written to states members about, saying what they would like is, what troubles them is that now when you go from, they want to move from 200 because they want to produce more than 200. So they want to produce more than 200 so that they can export. But as soon as they start to export, then we've got to make sure that there's a non-discriminatory regime. And as the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development says, actually the reason we're changing is to protect local companies against the importation of a type of alcohol which is then brought here and distilled for a second time, or as the Deputy said, flavoured. So it's two different approaches to distilling, and this is where we've got the slight mismatch. But it is important that if we don't make this change, then local distillers are disadvantaged in a way that I don't think everyone in the industry yet realises. And that's the problem that we're trying to solve on the surface. We would say, okay, well, the grain to glass, let's just not make this change because we think it's going to help them. The reality is that once you've moved from 200 to 20, then that's in what's creating the problem. But we do have to help local distillers export. If we don't want them to export, we want to say, no, you're just producing here for the local market, then we wouldn't have changed the amount of litres that can be distilled under this regime. And of course, remind ourselves that I think it's 20,000 litres is something like 70,000 bottles. So it's not just, you don't just, there's a multiplying effect in effect.
Can I just clarify to the Minister, if you so does this work or not? Because that's what members are trying to find out. Does this work, and is it going to stand up to meeting the expectations of our local people, of our local companies that want to export their product or not? Because I don't understand what he's saying.
Deputy Gorst, you prepared to respond to that question?
So I can give a clarification which might not be clarificatory because it's quite technical. Yes, it does work. Yes, it does work if they want to export, and they want to export more than the 200, because now they can produce up to 20,000 and export. The problem that we've been contacted about is those those distillers who are from grain to glass, yes, grain to glass, who are concerned. Is there a different term? Who are concerned that they think that some other smaller producers, so within the 20, who do the importation, they are saying they don't think that bit's quite fair. So they're concerned about the unfairness between 200 and 20,000. But the reality is that in order to be able to export, and you're capping that export at 20,000, there's got to be the level playing field, non-discriminatory approach.
Sir, can I ask a question of the Attorney General?
Yes, you may.
I'm sorry to be doing this at such a late hour. I do think it's slightly a consequence of the government's not getting its act together, frankly, on this beforehand. But can the Attorney General say whether if we vote down the amendment that we are currently discussing, which would return the situation to how the government had originally put it in the budget before they tried to amend it, if we take that action and at least wait a year before we do anything, will the government be liable under any trade laws or anything that we have signed up to? Will we be taking an illegal stance?
Mr. Attorney.
Sir, I think in terms of the WTO and GATT rules, the consequences would be primarily diplomatic rather than hard legal consequences. So I think the answer is probably no. It wouldn't have the consequence that the Deputy suggests. However, the government's proposed amendment reducing the small distiller requirement from 40,000 litres to 20,000 litres, in my view, from a legal perspective, is a prudent one, because it reduces the scope for small local distillers being seen to be given a unfair trade subsidy or competitive advantage, and it maximises the scope for this being a de minimis type exception. So I think legally, from a legal perspective, this amendment from the government is a prudent one. I stress that I haven't seen the document that all states members seem to have received, but I haven't received it from local distillers, so I'm not able to comment on the position factually and their concerns because I haven't seen them.
Thank you, Tony. Does any other member to speak on this amendment? I call upon the Minister to reply.
So the Minister has just, I think, had a call of nature. I don't know if you would like me to sum up as the Assistant Minister.
Members content? Yes, you may do so. Mr. Minister, if you were prepared to do so, you have offered to do this.
Thank you, sir. I don't really have much to add to that, which I've already said, but I'm grateful for the intervention of the Attorney General. I appreciate the why Deputy Renouf has wanted to have this debate, albeit like everyone else, I'm hoping that we really do finish this evening at 5:30. I appreciate why he wanted to have the debate. I think it's been important to have the debate, and I appreciate that some members, for the reasons they've said, may vote against this amendment, but I would just remind members of what the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development said, which I was not aware of, and I wouldn't be because it's his department, that there is a very real potential of business coming in and competing if we don't make this amendment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Assistant Minister.
Shall I call for the appel, sir, please?
Yes.
And the first items, as requested by Deputy Renouf, so if we could take them in two votes, that would be helpful.
Yes, so It's the amendment with the exception of the last sentence, 40,000 to 20,000 litres, that members are invited to consider first. So I invite the greffier to open the voting in relation to the first part of the amendment. All members have the chance of voting, both here and remotely. Then I invite the greffier to close the voting. I can announce that this part of the amendment has been accepted, 34 for and 6 votes cont.
Over the 6, please, sir.
Yes. Just the 6.
Those members voting cont, Deputies Gardner, Moore, Ozef, Miles, Renouf and Jearn.
Now move to the appel in relation to the last part of this second amendment, namely Article 23, 3B, Roman 2, for 40,000 litres, substitute 20,000 litres. I invite the greffier to open the voting. All members have the chance of casting their votes, both here and remotely. I ask the greffier to close the voting. I can announce that the balance of this amendment has been adopted, 39 votes for, 1 vote cont.
Deputy Gardner voted cont.
So, Minister, do you now propose Articles 22 and 23 as amended?
Yes, please, sir, I do. Thank you.
Now that they have been amended. Yes. Do any members wish to... the debate is now open on the articles as amended. Does any member wish to speak on Articles 22 and 23 as amended? Yes.
I'm just going to make one point, which is I do think it has been poor to the government to bring so much information to the table so late. It's not been possible to fully understand all those points, and I think that is disappointing. I will be supporting the amended amendment, but I do feel that's not been great.
Constable Brillard.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the Treasury Minister wasn't in just now, but I would like an answer to my question as to whether there had been consultation and if there were any adaptations to be made for, in response to the cider makers, will she be doing it? Thank you, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak on Articles 22 and 23 as amended? I invite the Minister to reply. Minister.
Sir, I accept, in hindsight, Deputy Renouf's observation. It was a last-minute change. Deputy Miles asked why this wasn't discussed yesterday. It was, to an extent, discussed yesterday, but the only impact, we did discuss it, it was in Amendment 29, which we discussed last night. Amendment 29, however, only affected the part which was in the government plan, which was the reduction from 40,000 litres to 20,000 litres. I discussed, but not as fully as Deputy Morell has done today. I did discuss that we had moved from the dual rate for 50% for true distillers and the slightly lower rate for the importers of distilled spirit. We did discuss that yesterday, but the actual legislative changes are in the finance law, which was our late amendment. I'm sorry if that was not very well explained, and it's something I will certainly take away for next year. So I am sorry there's been confusion about it. To answer Deputy Constable St Brelad, yes, absolutely, there has been consultation about this. We don't make tax changes without consultation, which is one of the things I've said with some of our amendments to the government plan. We should not make changes to tax without some degree of consultation. And there has been consultation right from the start of this year until very recently, and that's one of the reasons when we realised some of the impacts of the dual rate, why we made a late amendment, and we brought down while the increasing of 20,000 litres to 40,000 seemed like a good idea, we then realised that actually that increases the number of producers that could import into the island and get the benefit of reduced rates. So, but there has been very full consultation with the industry over this. Thank you. So, sir, I think I propose those two articles. I think we're still just on those two articles. I'd like to propose those two articles as amended.
That's right.
Please, sir.
Members continue to proceed on a standing vote, or is the appel asked for? All those in favour kindly show. The articles are adopted. Thank you. Minister, now move on to Article 24 on its own, because 25 is subject to amendments. Do you propose Article 24 in second reading?
Yes, sir.
Is that seconded?
Yes, sir.
Members content to accept that on a standing vote? Those in favour kindly show. Thank you very much. Article 24 is adopted. Minister, we now move on to Article 25, which is subject to two amendments. An amendment lodged by the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel as amended by your amendment. Do you propose the article as amended by those two amendments?
Yes, I do, sir. Thank you.
Members content to debate that article as amended? You second it? Members content to debate that article as amended? Yes. Does anyone wish to speak on the article?
So I will second it then now.
Thank you very much.
Slightly premature.
Does anyone wish to speak on the article as amended?
1 minute, sir, if I may. I am one thing that has not been raised, and I think that needs careful consideration, is what is happening as a result of this now amended amendment about the issue that Jersey is having an increasing amount of old cars circulating, and we're preventing other cars coming in. But that's an issue for another day. I'll just signal it that I'm very concerned about the making it very difficult to buy have new cars, but people are not in the income bracket that can buy electric cars, and so we're getting a greater and greater number of old polluting cars, and this doesn't help. It's a disincentive. I haven't raised it before because everything's been moving so fast, but there is an underlying issue which I don't think members are aware of.
Thank you, Deputy. Does any other member speak on this article? Yes, Colin Tarver, St Saviour.
Thank you, sir. Very, very briefly, sir. I've endorsed actually the items that Deputy Joseph just mentioned. We need to get sort of cleaner, greener vehicles in. And I've spoken briefly about electric vehicles, which are parts of the solution. Also, I believe we should have cleaner, improved fuels to keep the vehicles that we do have in circulation. One of the problems being that many of the car companies that are producing electric vehicles are rolling back on their production big time, both in the UK and in Europe. The Chinese were going to build 2 mega factories in Europe producing the batteries for the new electric vehicles. Those 2 mega factories have now been cancelled. Many European companies, Volkswagen included, will be closing down 3 of their production lines which produce the electric vehicles. The Chinese will be have hundreds of thousands of cars ready to go in fields. They're called BYD, and I think BYD may even end up replacing BMW, so that's something to look out for. And it's an ongoing problem of supply and demand, but I've mentioned previously about range anxiety, which we don't have in the island because we're 9x5, but the range anxiety does increase in Europe because the charging stations are not there yet. So unfortunately, range anxiety is a big thing in Europe. And the Germans, not a people known for their humour, now actually say, if you buy an electric vehicle, you must also buy a dog, so you never have to walk home alone. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commodore. Does any other member to speak on Article 25 as amended? I call upon the Minister to reply. Minister.
Thank you, sir. This change was also subject to quite a significant degree of consultation with the Motor Trade Federation. You will recollect from the government plan that we chose to support families through the cost of living crisis, that we chose to increase VED bands only to increase duties for the top 3 bands. Those are the most polluting, and our belief is that those are the bands which are not the most average family cars are not in those bands. So that is why we have only affected those top 3 bands to try to help those families. We are very well aware of the issues about second-hand cars coming into the island, because I've spoken to the Motor Trade Federation twice this year about those issues. Electric vehicles, they're available in Jersey, sir. I don't think Constable St Saviour's necessarily had a question, of just an observation. So, sir, I propose that article as those articles as amended, please.
Thank you. Members in favour of Article 25 as amended, kindly show. Thank you very much. Article 25 is adopted in second reading.
So I was just wondering if the people online are standing up.
Sir, do you ever
We'll
count
never
whether
know.
or not there's anybody against?
Forgive me?
On a standing vote, do you ever ask whether there's anybody voting against?
Well, there were so many standing in favour, but next time I'll ask how many are against, so they can stand up too. Articles 26 to 38 inclusive. Do you propose those, Minister?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yes, I do, sir. Propose Articles 26 to 30. 30?
38 inclusive.
38, yes, please, sir.
Is that seconded?
Yes, sir.
Do you ever to speak on these articles 26 to 38 inclusive? Yes, Deputy Joseph.
Sorry, I'm sorry, sir, but I have to be consistent in my voting. These are all of the articles that deal with the stamp duty issue. I would invite the Minister, when she considers what she can do. In the comments paper, she spoke about the stamp duty on loans. I was wrong. That's a good example of something that we could have worked on together. Stamp duty on loans, which is, I think, embedded in these articles. That's something that should be abolished. And I think I'm right in saying that. I think the Assistant Treasury Minister is agreeing with me. That would be a good example of something we could agree to, and we can't because we didn't discuss it. But stamp duty on loans is wrong and should be abolished.
Does any other members to speak on these articles in second reading? I call upon the Minister to reply. Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sorry, sir, I think we were talking about Articles 26 to
38.
Sorry?
To 38.
To 38. So, yes, I'm sorry, I apologise. Those do include the stamp duty provisions. we're aware of the Deputy's concerns. Thank you, sir. Propose those articles, please, sir.
Those in favour kindly show.
The appel.
The appel has been called for. Members are invited to return to their seats. I ask the greffier to open the voting. If those present in the chamber and present remotely have all had the opportunity of casting their votes, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. Announce those articles have been adopted in second reading. 38 votes for, 3 votes contra, and 1 abstention.
3 and the 1, please, sir.
Those members voting contra, Deputies Moore, Ozuf and Andrews, and Deputy Jeune abstained.
Now we now move to the last article in second reading, Minister. Article 39. Is that subject to an amendment by you? Proposed by you?
Yes, sir. I'd like to propose that article, please.
Do you propose that as amended?
Yes, please.
Any members object to the article being proposed as amended? Do you want to explain the nature of the amendment, Minister, to members?
Yes, sir. One of the articles that we've just approved, Article 31, makes changes to the Revenue Administration Law, and that relates to the administration of the Commissioners for Appeal. It requires us to appoint a chair and a deputy chair who have to be legally qualified, and they will then sit with 2 other panel members. It also increases the number of panel members of commissioners from 12 to 14. We realised, again, somewhat late in the day, that if we approved the Act, those provisions would come into force immediately, and we would not then be able to have any meetings of the Commissioners for Tax until we'd appointed chairs and deputy chairs. So Article 31 allows me to set an appointed day Act by order, which I will do once chair and deputy chairs have been appointed. We're basically putting the Commissioners for Tax on a similar footing to all other tribunals in the island, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the article seconded?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Does any member speak on Article 39 as amended? Deputy Ozuf.
Thank you, sir. I'm well familiar with the Commission of Appeal, and I just draw members' attention to the fact that the opportunity, again, these are one of the details that actually matters, but Commissioners of Appeal are highly respected. They do a very good job, but nobody knows what their conclusions are. And I just asked the Minister whether or not she would, maybe it's the wrong time to do it, but there is a complete opacity about any Commissioner's appeal and what the judgments of the Commissioner's appeal are, and whilst respecting individual taxpayers' confidentiality, there should be a way of somehow communicating what the Commissioners of Appeal are doing and the general direction of travel they're making on appeals. And that's not reflected in this, and I regret that. I'm not voting against it, but it should be found that there should be a way of making some sort of publication about what the Commissioners of Appeal are doing, because people don't know.
Thank you, Deputy. Does any other member speak on this article? I call upon the Minister to reply. Minister.
Sir, that point that Deputy Ozuf has made is one that I have discussed with certain of the Commissioners in conjunction with their discussions about their move to the Tribunal. I think once the Commissioners do move to the administration of the Tribunal Service, we will be looking to see how their decisions can be published. It is a very difficult thing to do because of taxpayer confidentiality, and in a small community, the level of redaction that may be required to protect taxpayer confidentiality sometimes means that they become very close to unreadable. It's an issue that also arises with some of the social security tribunals. There's also an issue that the Commissioners do hear a vast number of appeals, and there is very little point in, I believe, burdening the profession with decisions that really do nothing to change the law, to process or policy. So we are looking at finding a way of publishing any decisions that really make a difference to how agents advise or to the interpretation of the law and the practice of the revenue. But that is something we are working on as the Commissioners move to the Tribunal, sir. So I propose that article and as amended and call for the appel, sir, please.
Thank you. The appel has been called for. I invite members to return to their seats and the greffier to open the voting. If all members present and present remotely have had the chance of casting their votes, and I invite the greffier to close the voting. Announce that Article 39 has been amended, has been adopted, 42 votes for and 1 abstention. Do you wish to propose the law in third reading, Minister?
I do, sir. Thank you.
Is the draft
Yes,
law proposed in third reading? Does any member wish to speak on the articles as adopted in second reading in third reading? No? Those in favour of sorry? The appell's called for? The appell has been called for. I invite members to return to their seats to consider adopting the law in third reading. I ask the greffier to open the voting. Four members present and present remotely with the opportunity of casting their votes. Then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The law has been adopted in third reading. 34 votes for, 1 vote contra, and 7 abstentions. Minister, I understand you wish to propose the Act operatoire to give effect to the law.
Yes, I do, sir, please.
I think it's appropriate, greffier, for you to read the draft Act.
Draft Act declaring that the Finance 2025 Budget Jersey Law 2000 has immediate effect. The States make this Act under Article 12 of the Public Finances Jersey Law 2019.
Is the Act seconded?
Yes, sir.
Minister, do you wish to speak on the Act?
Sir, I move the Act, please.
Does anyone wish to speak on the Act? This is an Act declaring that the finance law just adopted has immediate effect. Deputy Joseph.
If nobody else can speak, and I hope members are aware of the significance that this is a unbelievable ability that this Assembly has to bring in to immediate effect law without a Privy Council, which has been the subject of a Royal Court hearing. And if members haven't seen the privilege and the onus of responsibility we have in doing this, this is an act operatoire, which means that the Privy Council is not required to consider this legislation, and it is a very important decision which we are privileged to have, and I'm pleased to be able to make it in from the constitutional position.
Thank you. Deputy Morell.
Very quickly, sir, really as a clarification, my understanding is, sir, that actually the Privy Council does still opine upon this legislation, but the Act operatoire enables the provisions to be brought into immediate effect, with the Privy Council having their adjudication, for want of a better word, at a later date. But they still do opine upon it.
Does any other member speak on the Act? Yes, Deputy Gorst.
So I know I'm one that wants to get home, but Deputy Joseph is absolutely right. This is our domestic autonomy in action, and we should never take it for granted. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Taddeo.
Yeah, it's just a final thought. Obviously, as Deputy Moreau has pointed out, it does still need to go to the Privy Council. So maybe any members in here who are not happy with the way the Social Security Fund's being used, I look towards the direction of where Deputy Banash was be sitting. He could make a... I'm talking about what's contained in the actual budget. But just as a general point, he can always appeal to the Privy Council if he doesn't agree with anything that the Assembly has done today, and maybe they can overturn our democratic decisions.
Sorry, sir, I am right in saying that that is actually the next regulations we're doing.
Well, that's not a... Yes, but I think we all know that. He was making a different point. Does any other member speak on this Act? I call upon the Minister to reply. Minister.
I'm grateful to colleagues for their intervention, and I again move the Act, please.
Thank you very much.
Call for the appel, please.
Yeah, the appel has been called for. I invite members to return to their seats and the greffier to open the voting. All members have the chance of casting their votes either in the chamber or remotely. Then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The Act has been adopted. 41 votes for, 1 vote const, and 2 abstentions.
Better have the one and two.
Yes.
The Connétable St Lawrence voted contre, and Deputy Moore and Deputy Alex Curtis abstained.
We now move on to the draft Social Security Law, payments into Social Security Fund, Jersey Amendment Regulations. The main respondent is the chair of the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel, and I ask the greffier to read the citation.
Draft Social Security Law, payments into Social Security Fund, Jersey Amendment Regulations 2000. The states make these regulations under Articles 50 and 51 of the Social Security Jersey Law 1974.
Minister.
Sir, I would like to thank members for approving the budget and rejecting the First Amendment. As I explained during the budget debate, I am now putting forward a change in primary law which will reduce the value of the state's grant into the Social Security Fund by £10 million in each of 2025 and 2026. With the reduction, the grant for 2025 will now be £80 million, and the estimated grant for 2026 will be £82 million. This change in law specifically tied to the years 2025 and 2026, and the calculation of the state's grant will revert to the underlying formula in 2027. Sir, I propose the principles.
Thank you, Minister. Are the principles seconded? Yes, sir. Does any member speak on the principles? Deputy Barbara Ward, then Deputy Alex Curtis. Deputy Barbara Ward.
I don't wish to repeat my speech that I made earlier this week. Feels like it was about 6 months ago. It feels like we've been here so long. But anyway, I will be voting against this. I want to continue with my principles that we don't touch the Social Security Fund. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. I don't want to speak long, but I would rather speak and attain evidence in decisions members make. And I want to turn to the principles and the background submitted in this report. And I tried getting answers from the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development on how he justifies his part of the provision of the package this seeks to do. And I think it is within this debate to talk about it still. because it is justified that these regulations shall be done to release funding that will be ring-fenced to help employees and employers adjust to the transition towards a living wage. Well, sir, at the same time, the Minister has told me that all productivity packages will not discriminate based on whether a company currently pays the living wage or not. So really, I was looking to a Minister for answers, but he's not here. I was hoping that we could get those answers, that could he once more, as I did vote with the amendment, and I would like to be able to change my vote on this, Deputy Barbara Ward has given her principled view, I would like once and for all to understand how this ring-fenced money both helps employers and employees adjust to the transition to a living wage if businesses that have already adjusted to the living wage can qualify for this money, which I think is right. There should be no discrimination. The Minister has failed to explain this is a prudent use of money, and I would like him to do so. I'd like him to return to the Assembly and do that, frankly, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Ozef.
So I won't repeat the problem I have with the use of the fund that democratic decisions have been made. However, the comments that I made earlier, maybe erroneously, I know that Deputy Dublé and Deputy Tadje are here. My concern is now turning towards the scrutiny that I know and forgive. I hope members will forgive all members that we are being faced with an awful lot of information, and I just would like on record that the scrutiny panels that are relevant to the looking at the way that the expenditure is being made, not the principle of it, because we are approving, as the last speaker has said, the actual expenditure, whether they are satisfied and they do not wish to do any more scrutiny on those amounts, on the way that the proposal is paid. And I do think that's if I'm not, please advise me if I'm out of, if that's not if that's a correct, an appropriate question to ask, sir.
Well, it's a question you're entitled to answer.
Thank you, sir.
Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. And the content of the very brief speech that I intended to make does answer the Deputy's question. I wish to reassure him that I have spoken with the President of the Scrutiny Liaison Committee and with the Chair of the other scrutiny panel that this area pertains to, Deputy Tadje, and there will be ongoing scrutiny of this issue, and we are going to be discussing this at the SLC meeting on Thursday as to how we can coordinate this between the panels. And indeed, if Deputy Ozef is particularly interested in this area, perhaps he might wish to speak to Deputy Gardner about how he may want to contribute to the scrutiny of this.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. I think it was some miscommunication. We did scrutinize, different panels scrutinized the principle. We didn't have chance and choice scrutinize how this 20 millions will be spent because we didn't receive this information in time to scrutinize. The information was given just before all amendments, I think, were lodged, and it was no way to scrutinize it. So we scrutinized the principle, and we knew that Deputy Baloch brought the amendment and not the scrutiny panel, but we didn't scrutinize the package, how it has been distributed and who will be paid and what's the governance and distribution procedures. And we will have a chance to do it because now we have information going forward.
Thank you, Deputy. Does anyone else want to speak on this, on the principles in relation to this amendment? Deputy Luce.
So I rise only in the absence of the Sustainable Economic Development Minister. The Deputy who's asked the question about the funds will know well the way that the Rural Support Scheme is administered and the credits that are given out to various parts of that scheme and how credits turn into money. And while I can't answer for the Minister on other parts of the funds that have been allocated to help with the transition to the living wage, I can assure the Deputy that when it comes to farming and fishing, that the businesses that have currently got employees on the minimum wage are listed with the number of employees on the minimum wage which they employ, and those numbers are fed into the spreadsheet for credits, and a scheme has been developed to help those businesses with the scheme.
obviously coming up to the conclusion that the more members you have on the minimum wage, the greater the amount of money you will receive. It's a complicated scheme and not complicated at the same time, but I'm sure I'd just give the Deputy that assurance that certainly when it comes to agriculture, there's a good way of showing that public funds are delivering public goods, and certainly when it comes to helping transition to the living wage, that scheme is being used to be a very fair way of administering the funds. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Will he give way for a point of clarification? Yeah.
Deputy, will you?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister just clarify, I don't know if I heard that right, that the number of employees paid the minimum wage can increase the subsidy that a business gets, whereas an equal business with members on employees above the minimum wage will get less money, and so that the support scheme is giving more money to businesses that pay a lower per hour staff within the same sector. So thank you.
I'm not in a position to clarify that exactly, sir. Obviously, as I said, the Minister's not here. I was just trying to help the Deputy and explain that this is being monies that's being administered through the Rural Support Scheme, but I don't know the detail other than that is the principle of the way the monies are being distributed.
Thank you, Deputy.
Point of clarification.
Deputy Joseph.
So the Deputy Luton, his previous minister, before he was a minister, brought the original proposition, and my amendments in relation to cannabis were rejected, although the government did indicate that they were going to limit it. Can he give any comfort to me and those that are listening that now with a scheme with 20 million, that effectively there's no caps on anything to do with cannabis? Did he wish to comment and give any assurance on that?
I don't think we're discussing cannabis at the moment.
No, it's the scheme for the loans, and the 20 million is coming from the scheme, so unless I'm mistaken.
So members will be relieved to know that this is not my scheme, and I don't know the answer, so I can't help the Deputy, I'm afraid.
Deputy Jones.
Sorry, sir, just rise very quickly to show that this discussion itself shows that because of the last minute delivery of quite complicated documents, I think it was on the Friday we got a briefing up, and it was stuck on one page of the PowerPoint, and we didn't actually get through to all the PowerPoints because members had a lot of questions to ask, and quite rightly, and no further offer of a briefing was had, and also as Deputy Gardner said, it was too late to even put amendments. I've brought up myself under the outcome accountability amendment that I had brought forward about the concern about the criteria, who is getting the money of the match funding, how is it being awarded, who is it being awarded to, and Deputy Curtis brings up that very valid point that I think we are, or as we are all asking these questions, we actually don't know, is that if a business, and it's unfortunately the Minister of Environment may have added to that confusion by inadvertently saying those who have more people needing to be paid the living wage, they will get more money. And that feels exactly what we were not told that was going to happen, because it does disadvantage those businesses who have already meeting the living wage, because that's the right thing to do. And we have many businesses in the island that already meet the living wage. We have states members who've stood up and say that that's what they do within their own businesses. We heard from Deputy War saying, how will his business, for example, or businesses like his apply for such a scheme when he's done all the things needed to be as productive as he feels he can within this space. So there's so many questions still to be answered, and that's what the concern is. As Deputy Garner says, we weren't given enough time to scrutinise, and I'm leaving, I'm going to sit down with quite a bad taste in my mouth, because again, I am absolutely supportive of a living wage, but I just feel that this productivity scheme was not presented to us. It's lastminute.com. and it has more questions than answers, and that's a real concern for me.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Tadier.
Thanks. So I don't really recognise any of what's just been said from the perspective of my panel. I don't know if my panel members feel differently, but I feel that actually the engagement that we had with the Economic Development Minister on the issue of this whole package that was being put forward, I think we did have time. We can always have more time. But I think he engaged effectively, and it's up to the scrutiny panel. We made sure that we got questions in a timely manner. We started working on this, I think I'm right in saying, we started doing the preparatory work before the summer, anticipating that this was going to come through. And the suggestion that this hasn't been scrutinised, I think, is incorrect. So it does. I've been trying to be quite kind with Deputy Joseph up until now, but when he says that he's not sure if the scrutiny's been done, but then he tells us he hasn't looked at the comments papers, and I accept that we can't always read everything, but then to say that you haven't seen anything, that's because you haven't effectively read them, I think. So what I would like to clarify here, sir, is just some of the recommendations that we've made to give assurance to the Assembly that actually an initial piece of scrutiny has been done, but ultimately, you can't scrutinise something that hasn't been done yet. So you have to wait until the package is being rolled out to exactly look at how it works, if there are any unintended consequences, etc. So let me just read very quickly a few of the recommendations that are relevant in this that we've put in our comments paper, sir. The first recommendation the panel made is that the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development should quantify and publish details about the benefits to Jersey realised from projects supported by the Technology Accelerator Fund. That's all linked as one of the packages. The recommendation for the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development should monitor and assess the outcomes of the business support package during the transition to a living wage project to inform future government decisions about the project prior to the lodging of the next government plan. So what we're asking there is that when this rolls out in the next year, of course, we're going to be scrutinising it. I suspect corporate services will be looking at it, but we expect them to be monitoring how this package is working out before they come back next year with the next budget. And recommendation 5, the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development should report to the states in each year from 2025 to 2028, so into the next government, into the next Assembly, on the progress and outcomes of the research study to establish and maintain a set of household minimum income standards in Jersey. Not immediately the same as the living wage, but there is clearly an interaction between those two pieces of work that's going on. One involving the Social Security Department, but the other, of course, involving very much the SED Minister and his department. There is definitely an interaction, of course, between minimum income standards more generally and the living wage. The two are not the same, but they do overlap very much. So I think the suggestion is that we've done as much scrutiny as we can. Ultimately, this kind of issue remains a political one. You either agree with the living wage or not. You either agree with the way the package is being rolled out or not. And I think I'm happy to accept that there's a plurality of views, I think both in the Assembly and both in our panel, but the suggestion that we haven't done the requisite scrutiny on this, I think any suggestion of that is completely unfair and fallacious. And I think that's also been recognised by Deputy Doublé, who spoke earlier. Yes, there will be a piece of work to do, a continued piece of work to monitor, which we will do objectively, looking at the Minister, asking if the methods put forward are effective, if they have any unintended consequences, and what the role is. And we did have some acknowledgement from the Chief Economic Advisor that there are consequences on both sides about going to a living wage, and that there are going to be higher costs for businesses, but at the same time there's a reduction in supplementation necessary, perhaps, and that actually more money in the economy where poorer people, this is perhaps the way I'm analysing it, is also better if it's being spent in the economy. So these are political consequences, economic consequences of the decision we have today, but certainly from an economic scrutiny panel point of view, I'm quite content that we've done the requisite work that we needed to, and that will be ongoing. And I thank, again, my panel members. I couldn't have done it without Deputy Sutherland, Deputy Andrews, and in particular Deputy Wilson has been very valuable as a Vice Chair, especially when I've not been able to be there in person, and we've always kept in touch to make sure that we're following a clear process that we're all content with, even if we might ultimately have slightly different political views when it comes to debates in the Assembly.
Thank you, Deputy. Does any other member speak on the principles? Deputy Wilson, then Deputy Morrell. Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. And I thank Deputy Tadia for those comments. I think it may well be these buttons on my jacket, actually, but I'm going to speak as an independent deputy because clearly when you're in the panel and you're trying to reach consensus, I think Deputy Tadia has outlined the panel's position on this. But for me, it does leave some unanswered questions, particularly about the targeting of this. And I think in the comments paper, I did actually ask the Minister at the time about where were the particular areas that we believed they believed to see improvement in productivity and increased competition as a result of introduction of the living wage. And I have to say we got a bit of a vague answer on that. And I do think that given the seriousness and the volumes of money involved, we do need to expect, where the plan is for the targeting of this resource going forward. One of the things that I'm particularly concerned about is to understand what kind of productivity measures we will see accompanying increases in living wage. And I think we've already spoken with some of the members who are saying that they are doing as much as they can as well as paying people living wage. So the question begs, what is the added advantage that some parts of the economy will see as a consequence of this scheme being introduced? The issue here, I think, is that we have got so much uncertainty about it. I absolutely support the move to living wage and minimum income standards and the work that's going to be done on that. But the thing that I want to share with the Assembly as an independent candidate is that I personally still have some concerns about the targeting of this and how this will be used effectively.
Thank you. Deputy Morrell.
Thank you, sir. And I am sorry that members feel that there wasn't appropriate time for scrutiny. I have to, of the package, I have to say there is a reason that we have scrutiny panels, and that is because we have been engaging with the scrutiny panel over time on this package of support. And the idea, one of the understanding, as I understand it, one of the reasons for having different topic-focused scrutiny panels is because the Assembly can rely on that scrutiny panel to give them comfort. So we were going to the scrutiny panel. We did explain to them what was going on with the productivity support scheme and the wider package. And I think that's entirely appropriate. I am sorry that the actual final package, which had only changed in some very, very small details at the very end, arrived late in that respect, and I am sorry about that. But the key elements of that package remained pretty much unchanged for months, and the scrutiny panel was aware of those. And in fact, the Assembly was, because I spoke in the Assembly about what the key, I spoke in the Assembly outlining where the money would be allocated, and any changes that happened at the very end were small in that respect. And so I do, I apologise that people feel that we didn't have enough, there wasn't enough transparency about it. That wasn't the intention. But I do know that we engage with scrutiny throughout, and that's the appropriate thing for a minister to do, is to engage with scrutiny. And the scrutiny panel wrote a very good comments paper about it, which is there so the Assembly can then draw conclusions from that work. That's the appropriate process for these things. And so in that sense, it's a shame that I think people sometimes misunderstand the scrutiny process. I enjoyed my 3 years as a scrutiny chair, and it may be that I am in scrutiny again at some point, and I will continue to do that. I think that's a really important role, and I always saw the fact that we have topic-based scrutiny panels as being one of the elements of their work is to give assurance to the rest of the Assembly as to the scrutiny that has taken place on any given topic or any given policy or any given law change. Nobody in Jersey has done this before. And so the outcomes cannot be guaranteed. That's impossible. And it doesn't matter which government you're in. And it doesn't matter which ministry you're in. And it doesn't matter which scrutiny panel you're on. When we make different choices and we start something new which hasn't been done before, it isn't possible to predict exactly the future. But what we have done, and when I came in and when I was re-elected as Minister for Sustainable Economic Development, I undertook to make sure that we didn't have a support system which was based on effectively just subsidising wages. That was something I did not want to do. The movement to the living wage, the faster movement to the living wage than was previously the case, in my mind, given the commitment to provide support around that for businesses, gives us an opportunity to help those businesses become fitter for the future. And that's not just some trite phrase. I really do mean that. Our economy needs to improve its productivity, and the support we are giving is designed to help do that. We have targeted it in those areas that we know are going to be affected by the minimum wage. So we have targeted the visitor economy. The only area where it is effectively subsidy for businesses is in agriculture and fisheries. And the reason for that is because that can be targeted directly through the existing support schemes. But for all other sectors, it is focused on helping them invest in their own businesses or helping them have greater productivity by bringing more customers to them. Those are really important things to do. We couldn't, because of targeting, we know that elements such as the care sector can be affected by the living wage changes. We know that charities can be affected by living wage changes. So we also realise it would be difficult to just have different pots for different, for lots and lots of different areas. We also can't be sure. There can be, there could be firms in the construction sector that still pay the minimum wage. There could be firms in the finance sector somewhere that pay the minimum wage. So it's impossible to have a pot for every single sector, which is why for those other sectors, the main productivity support scheme, the larger of those pots, is available to businesses and charities and social enterprises to help them do the investment that they need as well. I think that's really appropriate. I think that's the best use of taxpayer money. Because if taxpayers' money is being used to invest in businesses in a way that makes them stronger and more able to withstand the challenges of the future and to help us deal with the ageing population, then that's a massive win and that's an appropriate use of public money. And I stand by that, and I think that's a really good and far-sighted thing for this government to do. And I'm proud to lead that piece of work. Deputy Tadier is absolutely right. The scrutiny of this will be ongoing. The learning from it is going to be constant. There's no doubt that I'm going to learn from it, the department will learn from it, the Assembly will learn from it. And if we need to make changes in some months or years' time, then we are ready to do that. Because that's what we do. This isn't a minister trying to force through a policy which has been his pet kind of policy that he's wanted for years and years. This is a minister who's looked at a challenge and said, I think this is the best way to address that challenge. And I stand by that. I do think this is the best way to address that challenge. Chief Economist agrees with me. This is probably the best way to address that challenge. The money, I see a deputy not happy with me. I am not talking about the source of the money. I'm talking about how we distribute the money. The source of the money is a separate matter. But the distribution of that money, I do believe we're doing in the right way to help us create that resilient economy for the future. We will learn, and where learning can help us change things and improve things, I pledge to put those learnings into effect and to change them as we go. And I will work with scrutiny to that. I will listen to scrutiny on that. But this has not been an unscrutinised piece of work. This piece of work has been scrutinised. So with that, sir, in my speech, I just hope that brings some assurance to members.
Thank you. In view of the time, I am obliged, understanding orders, to ask members if they wish to continue or adjourn.
How do we continue, sir?
Members content to continue?
Sir, if I may. I have a parish dinner which I'm hosting at 7 o'clock at the Ambassador Hotel, and two other deputies from St Clement's are sort of obliged, depending on standing orders, to be there as well. I don't know what the ruling would be on that, if I could take leave of absence at, say, 6 o'clock.
Yes. Well, if you need to withdraw, you need to withdraw.
Okay. Done?
Yes.
So how many
Minister?
people still want? Could we know how many people still want to speak?
Yes, we could. How many members still wish to speak on the principles?
Very briefly.
Just one. Deputy Renouf. Yes, Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the Minister's engaged with scrutiny, and I think that's great, and I know he believes in that very strongly. I think the point that's been made in opposition to that is that for ordinary members of the Assembly, we did not get details of this until a few days before this meeting. We were not being able to test the questions that it raises. I know that for a fact because I've asked many questions in the Assembly that was originally going to be presented to us in September, then it was the end of September, then it was October, and then it finally became the middle of November. It changed from being a scheme that was going to be funded out of reprioritisation to a scheme that was going to be funded from the Social Security Fund. It changed from being a scheme that was called the productivity scheme to being a living wage support scheme. And it also, I also know because we had a scrutiny hearing with the Social Security Minister in which she declined to discuss details of the scheme because they were still confidential. And I think that was either the end of September or the beginning of October. So there is no question that from an ordinary member's point of view, we have not had much sight of this. And I think that that point is an important counter to what the Minister has said.
Thank you, Deputy. I call upon the Minister to reply. Minister.
Thank you, sir. And I remind members that what we're voting on now is the legislation to make the funding available. This legislation has in fact been lodged for some months. And I thank the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development for his words. And I just wanted to speak, I think, because of course the package isn't my package, it's the one that will be run by the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development, so it was right that he spoke to that. What I can speak to is, as Minister for Social Security, why I was content to bring this legislation. And I don't want to repeat too much of what I said yesterday, but I have been working for months very closely with the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. We have been consulting with the different sectors and the business representatives, and this package is based on that consultation. It's based on the economic advice that we have had from the Chief Economic Advisor, and most recently, this is based on a States Assembly decision that was made yesterday. So, sir, I maintain the principles.
Is the appel asked for?
Yes, sir.
The appel has been asked for. I invite members to return to their seats and the greffier to open the voting. If all members have had the opportunity to cast their votes, both here and remotely, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. Principles have been adopted. 31 votes for, 1 abstention and 13 votes contra. Do you want all the votes?
The contra
Just the contra.
and the abstention. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Those voting contra, the connotables of St Lawrence and St Clement, and deputies Gardner, Moore, Ozef, Orr, Miles, Renouf, Jearn, Curtis, Ward, Wilson and Andrews, and Deputy Dublé abstained.
Now, it's not free from doubt whether or not this is a taxation draft for the purpose of Article 72, but Standing Order 72, but on the footing that it isn't a taxation draft, do you wish to scrutinise this matter of your panel, Deputy Miles?
No, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Now move to the articles, of which there are 2. Minister, how do you propose to advance the articles in second reading?
En bloc, please, sir.
Thank you very much. The articles seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on the articles?
Can I just...
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Can I just get on the public record whether or not this is the funds that will be available for cannabis growers?
Does any of them wish to speak on the articles in second reading?
Can I just ask a point of order? Does that arise out of the articles, that question?
That's a very interesting question. I think it's... in the circumstances, we'll find out if it's a proper question in a way when the Minister applies, but I think the Deputy was entitled to ask the question. Any other member wish to speak on the articles in second reading? No? I call upon the Minister to reply. Minister.
Sir, of course, that's not really my question to answer. That's one for the economic development. So I will just maintain the regulations.
Yes, the regulations in second reading.
I'm entitled to answer.
Members in favour kindly show. Repel's been called for. Members are invited to return to their seats. We're considering the articles in second reading, and I invite the greffier to open the voting. All members present here and remotely with the opportunity of casting their votes, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. Announce that the regulations have been adopted in second reading. 31 votes pour, 13 votes contra, and 1 abstention. Minister, do you propose the regulations in third reading?
Yes, please, sir.
Are the regulations seconded?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Does any member speak on the regulations as adopted in third reading? Those in favour of adopting the regulations in third reading kindly show. Thank you. Those against? Thank you. The regulations are adopted in third reading. That concludes public business for this meeting, and I ask the Chair of PPC to propose the arrangement of public business for future meetings.
Thank you, sir. And bearing in mind that we've been debating in this chamber or assembly for nearly 34 hours this week, please could you indulge me before I make the arrangement of business. On behalf of the Assembly, I'd like to thank the Bailiff, Deputy Bailiff, the Greffier, Deputy Greffier, Attorney General, the Gref staff, the government staff, the ushers and Jan and all who've supported us this week. The arrangement of public business. Our next sitting is in 2 weeks' time on the 10th of December, and we have a lengthy order paper. At the moment, we have 15 items of business to debate. Draft shipping P46, P63, amendment to standing orders, remote participation in states meetings, P65, public elections, extensions of eligibility criteria, P66, draft social security law, parental allowance and death grant, P71, reporting on ministerial affairs, P73, draft limited partnerships amendment law, P74, modern languages in schools, P75, draft employment and discrimination tribunal amendment, P76, amendment to standing orders, miscellaneous amendments, P77, draft single-use plastics, etc., P80, amendment to standing orders, timeline for ministerial appointments, P81, Jersey Overseas Aid, appointment of non-states commissioner, P82, support scheme for individuals qualifying to represent Jersey in off-island competitions. P83, elected Speaker and Deputy Speaker of the States Assembly, selection and appointment. P83, amendment from Deputy Sir Philip Balash. So please be aware that if we have any hope of giving due consideration and good debate on this very heavy order paper, we will be sitting for the full 4 days. Thank you, sir, and I make the arrangement of business.
Yes. Is that seconded?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Point Trinity.
Thank you, sir. I'm pleased to follow the chair of PPC with a request to the proposer of P83 to agree a deferment of the debate on the elected speaker from its current listing at the end of the order paper on the 10th of December to a future date in the new year. The reason, and after consultation with some of my fellow Conotab, is to allow time for the Conotabs to arrange a series of parish meetings so that we can enter the debate fully informed as to the wishes of our parishioners on this matter. At the same time, we would like to extend an invitation to the proposer and any other members to attend and explain to the public the rationale behind the proposals and, if approved, the impact of the changes. Sir, constables often come in for criticism for not making better use of parish meetings to discuss matters of wider public interest, and I will avoid the word constitutional and say substitute our island identity. I hope the proposer will be amenable to this proposal, appreciating that having had a long budget debate taken out of a 3-week lodging period, and this has already severely restricted the ability of members to prepare. Therefore, I sincerely hope that in the spirit of fairness, openness and democracy, the Constable will agree to moving his proposition from the end of an already long and order paper to a future date, to provide the opportunity for a full and proper debate that the public will expect on this important matter. This is something that involves all islanders, not just 49 members, and should not be rushed through at the end of a busy week, at the end of the last sitting of the year. And I think the way we're all feeling this evening, I'm pretty sure I'm pretty jaded at the end of this week, and to take a matter to a debate on such an important matter, which is really how we operate in this place, I think deserves proper consideration. And I don't think, with all due respect, that this is being facilitated by leaving this item on that paper. Thank you, sir.
Conotab, are you asking the Assembly to determine this issue now, or the Conotab of St John to consider it now?
Well, I didn't realise that was in our gift. I was just asking for a reasonable consideration of that request. But
it's a matter for the
I don't
Assembly
know whether is it something under standing orders that one can ask for?
Yes, ultimately the Assembly is master of its own procedure. If you want to determine this now, although I have no embarrassment at all in presiding, I think it would be best members can speak freely if the greffier presides over this particular debate about when this should be determined. So I invite the greffier to consider this matter.
Sir, I don't think there's any need for you to withdraw, sir. It's unfortunate that my colleague didn't consult with this constable, because I'd have been able to give a decision this evening, sir. I will consider that, sir, and I'll advise members shortly. Thank you.
Yes, but are you content with that, Conotab?
Yes, thank you, sir.
So I'd like to move, if I may, agree with the Constable of Trinity and put it beyond doubt that we're not going to be understanding, because just an undertaking, we can make a decision to put it at the next item, at the next sitting, because I don't want to have my new year and others preparing for a debate that I might not know. So that if the Constable cannot even concede, maybe the Constable of Trinity could kindly propose a later date, because that's in order.
I'm going to invite the greffier to now chair the remainder of the public business. Greffier.
We haven't actually finished. If you want to resume your seat, the Deputy Bailiff actually just asked me to take over on the arrangement of public business. That was a proposition. Was it Deputy Joseph that you want to make?
I'm struggling, of course, may I just borrow my colleagues. The sitting that I would, I'm in the hands of Constable if he would like to propose it, of course.
If I may,
yes, Constable.
Okay, then I would like to make a proposal that we move it to the second meeting in the new year. The only date that I actually have is the 21st of January, which I think will still be too tight to arrange the series of public meetings that we're hoping to achieve. So whatever the meeting is after the 21st.
So Greffier, if you could help me, the date of the next meeting is the 4th of February. So the proposal is to move it to the 4th of February. Is that proposition seconded? Does anybody want to speak on the proposition?
The reason I bought my proposal and the time I bought my proposal was because of the impending retirement of the current bailiff, which is in October. I think it's disingenuous that the mover of this proposition hasn't had the courtesy to...
I don't think it's not a word that you can
Well, I
use,
withdraw
I'm
that
afraid.
then, Ma'am. I withdraw that and I apologise. It's been a long week for everybody. But I am disappointed that my colleague hasn't had the courtesy to tap me on the shoulder and talk to me about that. We have been here, as the Constable of St Martin said, for over 34 hours. That doesn't include lunchtimes. And I've been sat in my chair for every minute of every debate. And I've been available, and nobody has spoken to me. I do think I would ask the Assembly to give me time to consider the proposition. I'm delighted that my colleagues want to engage with their parishioners. I think that's fantastic and should be encouraged. And I really would ask for time, Ma'am. Thank you.
Sorry.
Deputy Tadier.
I agree with that. I think it's unfortunate that if Deputy Géant, Constable Géant even, sorry, I had a future flash there. If it had been consulted with, I think then this, a bit of time could have been resolved. But it is nice to see some of the constables get passionate about something, even if it is about keeping things very feudal.
Deputy, I don't think that's necessary. I think you should withdraw that comment.
Okay, it's not nice to see them getting passionate about things then, ma'am.
No.
I withdraw that. No. Sorry, what are we allowed to say? Are we being censored now? I don't understand whether we're being...
This isn't an opportunity for across-the-floor debate. Deputy, do you want to continue?
Thank you. So, actually, ultimately, this is a matter for members to decide. What's being proposed on the paper is not the removal of a civic head of the island. It's a matter of who chairs this assembly. And so it would be more constructive, I would suggest, for members to speak to each other ahead of the scheduling of any future debate on this, whether it's at the next sitting, at a sitting in January, or even if it's on April the 1st, to decide whether we can agree with this, because what's being proposed via a series of parish meetings, which will be chaired by somebody who's not impartial and has made up their mind on the issue, versus actually 49 states members getting together to decide who should chair their assembly, would be much more of a constructive way forward to decide on if, and indeed when, we have this debate, sir. So I would ask that actually time is given to the mover of this proposition to decide if and when he wants to proceed with it, and how and in what way. And I'd suggest that actually internal presentations would be much more fitting than involving the public in issues that have absolutely little real relevance to them.
Constable of St Martin.
Thank you, sir. I'd just like, Madam, I would like to address 2 points. Well, I'd really like to say that, I don't think all deputies are particularly show much passion about some things.
Can I raise the same problem?
Yeah, okay, yes.
Excuse me, Madam Chair of PPC.
I'm just saying that's not very... Yeah, but it's not very fair, all this... Well, there's 2 points. First of all, Constable Joan, who sits next to me, I did raise it, and he said nobody had raised it with him. I did raise it with him, because I did say that it was a very heavy order paper, and this was coming at the end, so I did raise it with him. I apologise if I've said anything wrong. And the other thing is, I hadn't heard everything that Constable Swer was saying, but previous to him actually saying it, I knew that he was going to ask for this. But if we are having meetings in our parishes, the Constable of the Constable of Trinity has said that any members are allowed to come to the, so they can sit on the stage as well. It's not going to be partisan or anything. So if you all would like to turn up to the meetings, we have. Sorry, through the chair. We have been asked in our parishes whether we can have these meetings. I think we've all been approached to say, can we have some kind of meeting, because it is of great interest to the island. Whether the bringing of the proposition or members supporting it think it is or not, it is of great interest to members.
If you forgive me, the matter you're being asked to decide upon is really whether or not you wish to move the proposition to the 4th of February, rather than the detail of what may or may not be the format for meetings. Deputy Moore, I saw your light on.
Just briefly, ma'am, I do believe we're heading towards the festive season, and it's normal in most parishes to conduct drinks parties and events to engage with parishioners and to thank them for their service during the year. And that would provide a good opportunity for constables to engage with those parishioners and to hear what they have to say. There are other mediums available to them to do so also. And I would reiterate the point that Deputy Tadier made, that this is really a matter for the Assembly in terms of who the Speaker is in this Assembly, and that really only affects 49 of us. If we look back, and if I just could, if you would give me just a moment, if we look back at the last referendum that was held on the island on the composition of this Assembly, only 26% of people on the electoral register actually engaged with that referendum. And that shows, I think, the level of interest that really is there within our community. And actually, this is really a matter for this Assembly to debate between itself. But I think we really should give the constable a moment to consider this rather than being put on the back foot by his fellow constable, and allow him to make a decision about his own amendment. Thank you.
Deputy Ellis.
Thank you, and I'm pleased to follow the previous speaker. I think this is the first time in the past 6 years, I've experienced a debate on when to have a debate on somebody else's proposition. And actually, I find it a little bit disrespectful. I think we should give the Constable of St John the opportunity to decide when he would like his proposition to be debated. I'd also like to remind members from a PPC perspective, there is also an amendment to be discussed, which is regarding a referendum. If that is approved, there has to be, I believe, according to the referendum law, a minimum of 3 months. Which then means that the timetabling to bring forward any legislation that needs amending from a PPC perspective, and of course, as we know, we don't like to do that with less than 1 year before an election, so we need to be mindful of that as well. So, Ma'am, I will be rejecting this proposition to delay it. I think we should give the Conotab, who's brought forward this proposition, the opportunity to reflect and to decide when he would like this proposition to be debated. Thank you, Ma'am.
Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Joseph.
I actually was going to be amending the proposition in a helpful way, I think in a constructive way, and I wanted to basically make sure that I've got the intent and the wishes of for consultation on what is undoubtedly an important issue, because there are other related issues which follow, and that's what I wanted to say. I wasn't in any way trying to. We've had a very heavy period of time, Ma'am. And there has not been enough time to consider these. We do have the Christmas break. I, for one, am trying to go away. And I just wanted certainty so that I know whether or not I need to be prepared for something or not, and get an amendment which is properly considered, properly consulted, giving the constable that brought it respect, and also the other constables and other members the opportunity to consider the amendments that I was putting forward, which I haven't had time to do, and I apologise for that. But I would move that it is a proper item, and I think the Constable of Trinity is reasonable. But just we need to have certainty, please.
Does any other member wish to speak? Constable of St Mary.
So I hesitate to prolong this procedure. My understanding is that the Constable of John, in regarding the initial approach, said yes, he's quite happy to defer it. I would. As long as he's deferring it away from the next assembly, I think it should be left with him to come back to the States. But I do think it is appropriate for individual parishes to
have the opportunity to consider it in a formal way and not simply at social events. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? Otherwise, I draw this debate to a close and call upon the Contab opportunity to...
Thank you, ma'am. Right, I set out to actually seek just a deferment, and I felt perhaps I got a little bit railroad and carried away. I'm more than happy to leave this matter with the Constable of St John's to deliberate, and I would ask if he would come back to me in a reasonable period of time, so that if we need to do something else or propose something else, then we can do that. I would just add that if I was to hold a parish meeting, not a parish assembly, that I would be asking an independent person to chair that meeting, if in case anyone was worried that there would be unintentional bias on my part. Really, and just to say that I appreciate that this has been brought because the announcement of the retirement of our current bailiff, but of course it could equally coincide with perhaps the next general election date as a point at which we could change. So with that, I'm happy to withdraw that proposal and leave the matter as a request that the Constable of St John's gives that matter consideration. Thank you very much.
Members content that the Contab withdraws his proposition and we leave things for the... Very well. Then returning to the arrangement of public business, does any other member have any other item they wish to raise? It's been a very long week. Is the adjournment proposed? Yes. The Assembly stands adjourned until the 9th of... Oh, did we... Sorry, Ashley. Did we agree whether or not you're starting on the Monday afternoon? No, I didn't propose that. Okay, so the estate stands